never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give, never gonna give. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give, never gonna give. Never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna give you up. I'm never gonna let you go. Never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna give you up. I'm never gonna let you go. Never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give, never gonna give. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give, never gonna give. Never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Never gonna give. Never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna say goodbye, no. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Gonna give, never gonna give. Never gonna give, never gonna give, never gonna give you up. Gonna give, never gonna give. Never gonna say goodbye, no.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in their cradles, profanities. I see the world through eyes covered in ink and bleach. Cross out.
Welcome back, everybody, to the SCL. We're here with more, not Valorant, sorry, not Rocket League. It is Valorant action coming into this week. We're all over the place. We just started. I'm even repping the SCL jacket here, and it's still not enough to keep my brain disjointed. Either way, like we said, it is Valorant this week. We have a pretty good matchup to start things off here.
Yeah, I definitely will not be here for Rocket League under any circumstances. So if you see my face, you know what game we're looking at for the day. But regardless, so yeah, SCL. Getting these finals underway, quarters, semis, grands. We're not going to get to all of them, obviously, but at least to go ahead and keep ourselves, so go ahead and start this road, find ourselves in the end stages. We know what we're dealing with for the most part here. Last couple teams remaining. We've had ourselves an extremely long season to get things going underway. A little bit shorter, I'd say, another kinds of leagues, considering we only do those best of ones. But now we're getting to the era where we're seeing these best of threes start to kind of come into fruition here, and a lot more consideration with the actual one that's laid out in front of us. Not only just in terms of regard to the actual game available to us in these kind of series and teams, but better yet, the options of the agents. Know that we've also seen the likes of a variety of Nurse and Bust come to as well. So That's going to take a little bit of consideration today, but we'll have to see whenever the map bends come along, as you can see underneath us.
Yeah, and the team's got to get to that best of three, right? That's what they're feeding for. That's what they're thriving for. You have a very troublesome initial stage of your season, right? And then you go, okay, we got to fight to get into playoffs in the first place. We got a lot of stages in SEL for the league, which is both really good and also sometimes can be a little upsetting for certain teams because you're like, oh, we're going to have this huge bracket run, and then things just tend to go really downhill really early, which for both of these teams here, we don't even get to say. They've had a very good run up to this point. I mean, every match we have going on here today between Georgia Tech White and Florida, as well as through Niner Esports and Florida Blue, you're looking at every single squad here that's gone flawless to this upper bracket. Yes, there was a DQ victory that did come forward against TCU, but that was for Florida Blue in our second series of the day against Niner Esports, which may mean theoretically they're less tested, which could be a problem against Niner Esports, which is a big fan favorite going into this, considering they are undefeated, but Florida Blue is as well. And that's 7-0 through the main season, even into the playoffs and whatnot forward.
Yeah, I mean, both of them obviously had themselves a good record coming into this thing. But I mean, somebody's got to lose at a certain point. Somebody's going to go home to a certain degree. But even then, we don't have to worry too much about actually going home because we did have that lower bracket going in a way and actual couple more steps to work with things. So teams do have that leniency. We got some great teams to work with there as well. But even more so, I mean, as you mentioned, that series, that best of three, that's what they're kind of working for the most part, because that's how we actually go ahead and get a little bit of a litmus test of how it's going to work next season, because we are discovering options. If you want to point any fingers at it, make it Scott and I, because we're trying to go ahead and put this whole thing together. But even more so, it really just comes down to what we had to work with here currently. The best of ones, sure, they're very, very troublesome. They're very risky, considering these teams, they do have to just deal with that one map. And they're like, man, we're going to put everything on the field. That's why we see, once again, that we're looking at Scent more than likely for this map, and probably for the rest of the series, I'd say more than likely today, unless somebody just really feels like they're setting the sunset so far, because after finally seeing it a couple times, it feels like it's the most relative concerning. That's it. It feels the most reminiscent of it, and it's actually a breath of fresh air. So once teams start to go ahead and get a feel for that, I could probably call that we may see it turn to Grands.
Yeah, I think Sunset is a map that is very entertaining for a lot of teams, but it's just such an unknown factor. Ascent is just so easy to just pick out. It's a legitimate agreement map. But I will point out, SEO has been pretty darn good about not just picking up Ascent as the go-to, but the farther you get into playoffs, the more tumultuous those battles are going to be. The more tested your opponent has been up to this point. Same with you. You're going to start falling back on those comfort points. And who the heck does not view Ascent as a comfort point for them? Apparently, neither of these two teams have any problem with it whatsoever. So we're going to have to see it here on the chopping block. I think for Georgia Tech White, considering the history they've had so far up to this point, 6-3, they've had to play 2 more games than Florida Orange have in the first place. They had to face a very tough Clemson Orange, which we kind of expected to come away with a good victory. They did have to drop into that lower bracket. I don't think they necessarily got the best of luck in the process for doing so, but they had a very good opponent of Kennesaw State University in the quarterfinals that they did take a win against. And now that Kennesaw State University team, KSU, are going to have to face off against RRG Orange, which also Florida Orange had to take a win over in the semifinals to drop them down below. So both of these teams have come away with a victory against RRG Orange in some fashion or another. Kennesaw State had faced them, who now had to face off against them. That's going to be a big battle for the lower bracket to keep moving. Either one of these teams, if they lose this and they drop down, which one of these teams obviously will, if RRG Orange comes away with the win, it's going to be maybe a rematch for one side over the other. Either way, it's hard to say in this first lineup of the day who's going to win, and it only gets tougher when it's the 2 7-0 teams up next.
I mean, I completely agree. Considering what we're dealing with so far, I mean, if I was going to place any bets here at the beginning of the season, not just based off Georgia bias, just to consider what we've seen out of these teams so far, Georgia Tech and Kennesaw were kind of two of my biggest contenders, I'd say. Looking at UGA during the regular season, I was impressed by them as well, knowing just kind of what Georgia has going in a way when it comes down to the Valorant scene. But, I mean, after seeing Georgia Tech kind of go through the Red Bull campus, clutch in what they pulled over there is absolutely outstanding. Same thing with UGA and what they made in terms of run. And better yet, just out of Kennesaw State as well. They've had an outstanding kind of program over there that they're working with. So even then, I'm really ticked that we, because of kind of rescheduling and whatnot, didn't get to see that Kennesaw Georgia Tech game. I feel like that one been one of the more grittier games we've seen the entire season. Just because we didn't get to view it, we do get to see kind of the development of the squad. Knowing that University of Florida Orange, I got to say their run's been a little bit lenient here in the upper bracket. So
it has felt that
upper
way.
bracket, if they do find themselves a little bit of a drop, this could be more of I'd say a luxury for them. They're going to have that insurance there because they are a very good team, but we got to actually see them be pushed to their limits. And honestly, like I said, that Casey, when it came around to the upper bracket, that's probably where we saw that definitive, possible rematch there towards the semifinals or the Grands, and that's why I want to put so much emphasis there. But considering we have going away the Niners and the Blue Squad, those are two that obviously we're going to leave that one for later. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more in detail when we get around to it. But speaking of this squad specifically and this matchup, I mean, Ascent feels like one of those better maps. It doesn't feel like we have a team that's lopsided. Thankfully, it feels like an even ground to say, look, we can go to Ascent, and it's not going to be a blowout in one regard or the other, because we do see Ascent a lot of times not find those double digits on both sides. We typically like to see the 11-13 somewhere there, as you see close to that tier 2 upper stage, kind of reaching that top of the barrel to find themselves into maybe tier 1 or the actual Challengers League. So knowing that these two teams can be capable of that, they can find that stepping stone. Ascent is where they're going to have to make their definitive ground, and not only just in terms of winning the match, but if they don't, they need to win it by a small margin. They need to lose it, better yet, by a small margin, because you can't show that this map is a pushover, because this is that circumstance where Ascent also acts as a double-edged sword. You're reaching these end stages, as I mentioned, the progression of every single team start to come through, really start to show its colors. And this kind of map, you know it's going to show up eventually. You know it's going to be there towards those finals. So you can't give up too much. And even then, you can't really show your composition what's to be made. But keep in mind, 2 weeks from now, ISO will be legal. So that could be something we see kind of as a curveball coming out. But I don't see anybody besides maybe the likes of Tens or somebody on Paper X really making those differentiations.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine here in the SEL, but if that does come to fruition, it'd be quite gorgeous. I want to point out something that you almost glossed over, and I thought was a very important thing to say. Florida Orange have a much easier run in here through the upper playoffs. They faced off against UKY Blue, who were a one-and-done team down in the lower bracket. They got their one win. They fell to LA Tech next. The side of RG Orange, which hasn't had to face very much competition at this point either, they are substantially, at least in my opinion, and this is not to dog on the team whatsoever, I think they're a substantially easier team than KSU Black, because like we said, we had a lot of expectations for KSU. That means Florida has had a pretty easy ride up to this point. Yes, good games, I'm sure, but much easier than what I would say that we've had to see GT White have to face off against. Georgia Tech's had a very tough time, has faced 3 times as many losses as Florida Orange up to this point in the mainstay season. They have had a tough go about it, and they are on a huge run in recovery to get their team back at a substantial point. And I don't think anyone looking at their stat sheet coming up to playoffs was envisioning them now making it to the semifinals and having a matchup against Florida Orange, who was on paper a solid team, was winning teams and games by very dominant margins, and then had a very easy coast through playoffs to this stage. It seems impossible, but now here we are, and Georgia Tech White are a team that you cannot sleep on, especially on a map like Ascent, which a lot like you see in a lot of other esports is like that gentleman's agreement map where everyone tends to know it, and even some of the weaker teams overall can upset a really big titan of a giant of a team and just pull something out of nowhere because they have that little bit of an edge on this map.
Yeah, and even then, you may be a little bit annoyed at us saying, and why didn't y'all go into the agent selections too much? Well, then again, it's a sin. We're talking about that. We're reinforcing it over and over again. You're going to see the same exact thing. You're going to get that mirror matchup. You're going to find what you expect in terms of agent selections, and we're not seeing any deviation here whatsoever from either side. Even then, once again, a mirror matchup completely. Considering that you got the Jet there as the entry, you got the KO and Sova kind of double Dutch when it comes around to the initiator. And then, well, obviously, you got Omen there as your controller. You do like to see these kind of double controllers every now and again, maybe looking at something different with an Astro, but here, there's no real differential anymore. It's just science. Working what you got, collegiate scene, tried and true, and just seeing what you can really dish out here. So, I mean, thankfully, once again, it comes down to just who's the better team overall. And we see this mirror matchup. We're not seeing a double duelist by any chance. We're not seeing a Sky possibly being employed here. It just comes down to really what sides do you have to work with and what side are you better on, better yet, because you want to have yourself at the definitive start. You want to have some relevancy inside this game. I'm going to say 9-3 is obviously minimum. We're not going to go ahead and go too crazy outside towards the 10-2, 11-1, 12-0, obviously. I'm expecting hopefully at least a 7-5 here for this entire game. It really just all starts right here on the pistol round.
Yeah, the pistol round can set the tone fairly early, and look what we're seeing from Georgia Tech White. You don't see it very often, but when it is brought out, it tends to go full force. There are 4 players on the defense looking to bring a direct rush in from bottom mid, which on the map of Ascent is the defensive side of mid. They're trying to rush forward as quick as they can towards that link connection side towards B lobby. There is the possibility of danger towards top mid, where we do see 2 players, mostly just the Sova for the side of Florida Orange, testing the limits in terms of visual. They do that with a recon bolt, or they can do that just guns up, but they'll wait for the team to be able to fight them in towards link, as well as having the rest of the team rotate back their way. Alpha Poor with the first blood does get a good chance for a second, still on the board, needs to fall back. DJL though's picking up 2, and it's taken a lot of leeway that Florida Orange and seemingly gathered in those first few kills and brought it back to an even sitting and a 2-2 split, where both players for Florida Orange are completely separated on opposite sides of the map right now, Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, just a huge split here to go and get things started off with. I mean, Georgia Tech obviously not really expecting the aggression to come through towards the middle of the map. I mean, it's a wild card every now and down again for your Jet, but for the rest of the team to follow suit's obviously crazy in its own right. But considering the kind of health pulls across the board, extremely even. I mean, both teams both have at least one player who's technically one shot. The other two have that differential and had that full health pull to work with. It comes down to who's going to find these trades, who's going to find the right positioning, who's really going to make sure to kind of capitalize off the given situation. And quite frankly, you see KJ Pixel not really too much to work off of. Considering that you're not really able to push towards tree yet, you're going to come in for a great flank, don't get me wrong, but you got to get that timing. And knowing Valor is more than likely to come to him.
Yeah, one player up in rafters, another one rotating back through garden. And we'll be very careful for the side of GT White to recover from this position. Dark cover over the top. B's in a very rough spot because they just stepped right out of the cover, direct to the lines of light of PXL, and then bolt from up on rafters. He was also low HP in their own accord, just sprays through the dark cover where they planted that spike and knew exactly where it was, and it comes away with the Florida Orange round win. Another thing to point out about that rush down through Courtyard, Dallas, the expectation for GT White is that the spike carrier is either inside B lobby or is going to be slowly working their way up through that middle courtyard from the walkway that connects over towards a tree and a garden in the first place. It was patience from Florida Orange that denied that possibility. They left the person in top mid. They didn't try to re-engage that space to save the team over towards link. They let those players get their loss of life. They let them lose when it came down to it, and they played for the objective, which gives them extra credits at the end of the day, which is a big boon for a first round win.
Most definitely already going ahead and starting things off here towards the second round. You get to go ahead and kind of consider these force buys that are coming through. You earn their money. But better yet, what are you going to do with it? You got to make sure to hold on to it as long as you can. I mean, we always put so much emphasis on these two rounds just because it doesn't only set the pace for these first two, but everything afterwards. You got to look at the Phantom being employed here. Is it going to have anything in the next round? Is Classic going to find damage? And it most definitely does with no real heals here on the board. That could have been a massive pick, knowing that even then KJ's isolated over here towards that B side of the map. So if we do see Ezra win this fight, it can be as good as over, just completely turning the tables. You see that 1v1 still going into where, while the rest of the team is looking to explore the rest of the options here on the map. I mean, a 1-2-2, something you don't really see too much, but talk about the defaults and how important it is to get that default read on the defensive side very early on. And we see Florida Orange already employing that, capitalizing off that fact, working with the guns they got, and even then leaning into the corners that are necessary for them. You see Zero not really overextending there, working for those longer angles of the Marshall, kind of going ahead and playing around those places they can excel in. But Ezra's going to be in a tough shoe here to go ahead and fill, knowing that you get that classic cylinder way with the kill there. You're not going to find too much else, but able to get at least a little bit of shots off is going to be good lenience in here and sharpness for the rest of the squad.
It was time bought. I mean, that was an extra 6-7 seconds that could have just completely blown over for the side of Florida Orange onto the objective. And now GT White have gotten onto the point. They're sitting correctly inside market. For the time that spike goes down, and they can start to pick apart the attacking side, now post-planning defense of Florida Orange. Zero, though, huge picks there with the Marshall. Getting two in the process, buried the odds of Georgia Tech White to recover from. 3 weapons down, though, does make this a little bit pricier than Florida Orange necessarily would have wanted. But when all of their success really came off of that Marshall and the loss of life over there towards B main, it's still a good result at the end of the way, and GT White will now have a good buy for their third.
Still a pretty big investment, I'd say, out of Florida Orange, considering they had to use that paranoia. Sure, they found a couple guns off the back of it, and were able to go ahead and knock out the majority of the squad there from Georgia Tech, but even then more so, the paranoia is the most expensive thing in Omen's kit. And to go ahead and make that kind of expenditure when it comes around to the second round when you don't have anything else to work with, you're making a very big investment. Not nearly as big as the likes of the Sheriffs. I mean, you got to give that credit where it's due. Able to go ahead and make sure to make do with what you got so far. But it comes down to another round like this with Florida Orange. They don't really have much to work with now. We see the majority of the buys sitting over towards Georgia Tech. You do hear that Phantom carrying over, keep in mind, but that one Phantom has to carry so much weight and can't really be overextended, considering that you don't want to lose that gun. You have to be able to pass it off like a domino effect or work in tandem with the rest of your squad to really get the weight out of it.
You highlighted a little bit the Florida Orange default that came forward. I want to point out another thing from the Sova, the player that's actually been holding on to the spike every one of these rounds. The positioning has been beautiful. I highlighted first round they held back. They didn't re-engage early. That made sure that GT White had no idea where the spike was, and it led to them getting the plant at the end of the day, which then made that attack more favorable in the post plants. They did it again in round 2. They left spike a little bit further behind. They left it in corner, where we see them doing the exact same thing here, just behind the Radiant Knight crate. But in round 2, they had this genius strategy with one player towards B main, one player inside of bottom mid, which meant that it was literally impossible for Georgia Tech White to claim control of space and cut off your spike carrier from the rear, which just left the team with little knowledge besides the fact that they're not in these zones they've taken control over, but with perfect positioning, knowing that no matter what comes ahead of them, they are going to be safe and they can step up for the plant if they just need to make the rotate, and they did so very well. But this round has been all for naught so far. Zumba gets first blood, quite a distance into this, with only 15 seconds left.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really see any options here considering it was handed to you in terms of time. As you've already going away, you see the things coming out, you see the aggression coming through, and quite frankly, it works to a certain degree. You go ahead and pick up a couple of players. Even then, unfortunate timing coming out there from Adamava. It's not the biggest deal in the world. You still have the 2v1 on your hands, and even then, that last player will not be able to touch that spike. So it's a defensive win here coming up from Georgia Tech White, but a lot more because they were really expecting losing 3 of their guns as well as a big exchange in a round like this. So going into the next, when it comes down to how the rest of the game of this pan out, I mean, do you see the players go ahead and making an aggressive push? Well, quite frankly, we saw Florida really hold back on that. The majority of those picks came from a lucky push that went back there towards Jenny. You're just really funneling yourself into that Bulldog, which is, I mean, don't get me wrong, not a terrible gun, but not the best in a situation like that with the majority of those players going for a Phantom. So it's the exact opposite, though, there for Florida Orange. Able to hold on for a couple of those Vandals that we saw and some Bulldogs being employed from the defensive side. They went for some pretty Phantom emphasized plays there. And I mean, it really came down to these lineups. Know that even then, close and aggressive, you're seeing Sheriffs and Bulldogs win those. So you got to, once again, we talk about the employment, looking at the kind of ballistics and kind of range that's going to be optimal for yourself. And you got to know when to really employ utility and when to really take that swing.
The presence on the map so far for Georgia Tech White has been pretty good defensively. I highlighted round 1. They went for a very aggressive stance. It was not the worst idea in the world. It just really countered well by Florida Orange's positioning. And that's going to be something Georgia Tech White are going to need to keep an eye on for the remainder of these rounds. They've now noted they like to play extremely slow. Both round 1 and 2 played that way. And even when they had good weapons in round 3, when they forced up and still after round 2, they played to the final 15 seconds. If Georgia Tech White can just stay as calm as they have been and really let Florida Orange bite themselves in the rear and let that 6th man on the pitch, Father Time, continue to tick in their favor on the defense, the job only gets easier, and they're going to force Florida Orange to change their strategy. And it comes down to whoever changes first loses, but it may give them the lineage edge that they're hoping for. So you got to change sooner rather than later. But Florida Orange on the prowl through bottom mid after losing 1 towards B lobby. They seem kind of pinched here, Dallas. It'll be dangerous to get out of.
And even then, I mean, you know the funnel was going out there through market already. We saw the Sova back towards spawn, not to overextend there, to go ahead and employ the Owl drones. They don't get too crazy with it. They're more than likely to be holding that mid still. I haven't gotten the call that they pushed on the site yet, so I don't know if this mid section is really all that safe. And that's where you get the Omen, the dark cover, to go ahead and come and play there as well. Go for that double swing, see what you can get in the meantime. Hold on to every single player you can until this encounter really goes ahead and falls. So already, you see the full pinch coming out. Nobody really go ahead and aggressing anything yet because you still have those 2 players there towards 8 mains. You're going to go for a big push here, simultaneously employing 100 Fury from that attacking side, looking to go ahead and alleviate a little bit of the tension, but still, that's just going to do something as 100 Fury really is what's slowing these guys down. So even trade so far, 2v2, dropping down to 1v2, obviously, and with Florida Orange, this is very much so clutchable with 0 and Bolt Book's already losing HP, but it's not enough when you know that you got every single angle covered back there towards Boat House. So 3-1 start here for Florida Orange. Good leeway for them. Good start to go ahead and work off of, but it feels like every single round is looking so close where money can't really iron itself out yet.
Florida Orange played that exceptionally well with the Hunter's Fury. I mean, keep in mind, they know it's going to be coming. They know they have it ready. They don't want to send it too early. And with the lack of information that was being given to Kogan inside of market, with the total absence of GT White pressuring them, which I thought was a little bit questionable. I thought if anyone was going to pressure in towards market from defensive spawn, it'd be a Tomiao, but they completely circumvented it. It was a very static defensive position coming out from GT White. The 2 people they left towards B lobby, which was a smart play to keep them away from the site and just to say, okay, we'll play for the replant. But where was the 3 coming from defensive spawn going to do for yourselves? The Hunter's Fury comes out. Florida Orange play it perfectly. They'd waited 12 seconds to pop it. It gets so much damage and more with a kill on top of it. And it basically made it so that Kogan's job was completely done. No longer needed to be responsible for watching defensive exit and could turn over there towards the B lobby, B main side instead, where they took another player trying to step in through walkway. Their job done. And the rest of the team picked up the pace on site in Boathouse, where they just knew they could hold static, get the recon bolt out where needed, fall back there for the Jets, and play smart for the last bit of kills, which they only needed 1 more to do.
What I love is after that aggression coming up from Georgia Tech right there, the double stat, they come back there towards B main. You already know that you can see KJ playing a little bit more passively back towards spawn, not really freaking out or overextending because they know that they may go ahead and double down once again. That's not the risk they're willing to take. They've seen, because they know the pressure's alleviated off that side of the map. Everybody's going to be moving towards that A side, going ahead, quadruple stacking it, really being ready for all the damage that's going to come underway. And this could be really big. Sure, you don't really have the best guns in the world, but still, the numbers, the presence that's there is going to go ahead and result in something, and it's going to result in a rotation already coming underway. Knowing that already you saw those players there, you know it's not even the best hit. They're not even caring about the guns that are in their hands. They just know that this isn't looking good for me. But even worse is going to be the likes of Ezra, completely surrounded. That's what happens when you linger towards main, and you don't really have much to work with now. You're going through a post plant that comes to the back of the map, and well, quite frankly, once again, with those guns that are available, which is going to be absolutely none, you're not really going to find the best shot here. Already one called underway. There you go. Camino able to go ahead and get one, but still, that may be all you're really left with out the back of that, considering that you got to pick up these guns. You got to see what you can get in their way, and knowing they're both still just holding pistols, finally able to go ahead and acquire a Vandal. That's your last one standing. So once again, another successful round from Florida Orange to be expected, but every single time it comes out as a pretty darn close affair with only two players standing once more.
And despite the fact we've seen them now take, 4 out of the first 5 rounds, it's not been in the best footing. Like I said, it's been very close. GTY aren't getting destroyed. It feels like very minor. Yeah, it feels very minor victories. And that's not just from the fact that the kills are getting close. The way that they're the first bits of the round unfurling are what's giving that favor to Florida Orange. The 0 point, if everyone on KO is so damn good on this map and is a must pick, that 0 point almost alone creates the options for that utility that you're really hoping for, alongside the just whole plethora of utility that's in the kit. That 0 point is information, and it's also zone denial. Sent out the 0 point over there towards A main for the defense of GT White. They capped not just 1 or 2, but even 3, as they had gotten 1 person over there towards tree, 2 people stepping up through A main, and they said, okay, this looks like a lot of presence on the A site. Let's pivot one of our players that was holding closer towards defender spawn in and over towards garden. But by then, with the fact that there was 0 noise coming out from the side of Florida Orange, they were too little too late to rotate back the other way. Florida Orange was sprinting. They were bustling their way over towards that B main side. They wanted the objective. Sent KJ back through the open. Ezra did not get the proper call out in time, which meant they weren't watching towards B main's opening and instead were watching towards the exit onto site. They wanted those kills for the transitioning players in through market, and they needed to be more careful from that flank. It just feels like miscommunication and a little bit slow to pick up on what Florida Orange are bringing to the table, which is causing a lot of problems and leaving the fact that despite they're getting kills in post plants, it's never enough to get them the win.
Even then, once again, we talk about this over again. Already round 1, but still not really the biggest affair for them, considering they're having to work off the back of a blade storm and a bucky here. But even then, that's a very, very cheap expenditures compared to what you see with the likes of a rifle, so you can't freak out about it too much. They're just at a point where they're saying, look, money needs to be ironed out. We need to go ahead and invest something here in a blade storm. I mean, surely that's usually like an eco play where you're trying to go ahead and compensate. We're up for 1. We're getting another one before the half rolls around. So we can go ahead and make that investment. We can see if we can get something off the back of this and just let everybody else play their game. So speaking of the ultimate, we're already seeing an ultimate coming away. The rifles are in the hands of these GT White players. They're coming off the back of a timeout, so they should be able to do something here. It just comes down to really what's available and whether Antonio can get that read, which isn't really the case. So the Null Command's now shut down. You have 4 players on both sides, technically, but what's left to really give? What's left to really play? Well, quite frankly, just the shots and the kills made here for the likes of GT White on this retake, because they seem extremely prepared for it. And you've already shut down nearly everyone.
BXL, who's been that lone kind of prowler on the other end, is now all by their lonesome, gets the isolated kill into DJL after breaking down door. The dark cover is not doing a lot for GT White, honestly, and it was their utility they sent out. PXL sends out more util on to the actual spike, trying to keep GT White for as long as possible off and away from it. The reload will come through. PXL is going to be too little too late unless they start firing perfectly. Now they don't get the luck they were hoping for. Ezra with very low HP, but at the end of the day, the round's finally won for Georgia Tech White in a round that it wasn't really expected to do so with limited weapons they were bringing to the table. And it still doesn't answer the question, is GT White good enough to face up against Florida Orange when even a round like that is still close and it's a thrifty recover?
Yeah, I mean, it's just those scenarios over and over again. Florida Orange even had to go ahead and invest that Blade Storm, even for a round they didn't win, with everybody else going ahead and holding on to those guns. So Georgia Tech obviously making a good use of that timeout, knowing that they didn't have to expend anything. I mean, look at them, still complete Christmas tree lights when it comes onto that side of the board. But I mean, everything else considered, you need to see what they're really going to deploy in the meantime. Ezra always gets super overextended when it comes around to that kind of B main peak. You want to go ahead and find its initial kills. You have to have an idea that, well, there's a couple of players there. So that lockdown, unless you find yourself a double kill, either you win with the lockdown and you go ahead and get those kills, and then guess what? You don't need to use the lockdown anymore because you've already found enough effort out of this round. Or you use it as somewhat of an actual retake. But more times than not, you're not even allowed to really employ that. And if you're going to go for the rotation, all your other teammates are going to be dead, and it can't be enough of a clutch factor. So considering that they're also not really investing that just yet, they want to go ahead and look for that equilibrium, see if they can win another round like this off the back of those 2 kills. I think they'll find them pretty efficiently, knowing they're in a 5v3. unless we find ourselves in another circumstance where just kills come underway and we once again only have 2 players remaining at the end.
Yeah, Florida Orange are looking at a very static attacking presence right now, which is seemingly something we haven't seen from them just yet. I believe this is one of the first times we've ever seen Florida Orange on a back burner of a position on a push into a site. They had one player lying over towards Winery on the side for Georgia Tech. They get away with a little bit of information, but that paranoia catching them off guard, the flashes to say more specifically, they just didn't have the success they were hoping for despite getting everyone paranoid. Miraculous recovery by Florida Orange, but right when they think they're out of the woodworks, it's just an opening in from the arches themselves that buries another player, and it's been the same exact story since then. Just 0-12 left, and Zero has 0 HP remaining as DJL takes them down from over towards Trees Walkway and gives another round win over towards Georgia Tech. We're now just 1 round away from tying us up 4-4.
I mean, even then, still off the back of a round like that, I mean, no matter what you're seeing still, that was probably the most impressive round we've seen the entire game. I think that really turns the tide, considering that, I mean, that's the first round we haven't seen only 2 players on the winning side be remaining at the end of it. So, knowing Georgia Tech didn't only have 2, they didn't have 3. They had 4 players remaining there. You can look at it still, even though they're finally going ahead and swapping the odds, creating a little bit of a mix up there in terms of the rounds. You see that it's once again Florida Orange, who's now on the broke side of things, can't really afford too much. They invested that Blaze Storm early, so they don't have it to work with right now. And you see that Georgia Tech White, they still have all of their ultimates to work off the back of. They still have a full buy. They lose the next round. They're going to have one again, regardless of how many players are standing. And that's going to be the biggest really tide turner here, the table flipper, considering that, I mean, this is what you got to work with. You got to think about the money. You got to think about how many players are still living. And when you have 4, that's not only just enough to go ahead and employ somebody else, knowing that you still have that Blade Storm. That's a purchase that can be made for somebody else to kind of compensate in the big scheme of things. So this can be a good look for him. This can be another round win for him, considering that Florida Orange are on this eco, unless we do see a thrifty. And once again, we're right back into the ruckus.
Ezra's employing an interesting strategy of using the architecture for their turret to block a couple of shots that could be sent their way. Not the strangest idea, but maybe something that could save them in a few moments if they know for a fact Florida Orange are beating them to the gunfights, and reactionary combat is kind of the bitter end of half of their playstyles. But Ezra gets away with the first kill in the round as PXL, their doppelganger, swings out. You're trapped. You need Zumba to extend, and Zumba's extension allows for you to get the 1-for-1. Ezra still over inside B main. Bolt with 1 HP after stepping in the nano swarm, cleaned and cut by B, and Ezra still uncontested in main. This cannot continue, and it does. 4 kills for Ezra, a tying round for Georgia Tech White, and they have stamped their name into the books and are here to take down Florida Orange.
I'm surprised the lockdown wasn't employed there. I mean, if you have any type of angle, any time of the day to really go ahead and put that into play, be right there. Just a little bit of an aggressor, a little bit of a distraction there for the likes of Florida Orange when they're coming through. Unless they know they're probably going to be detaining. They're kind of all frontal on the site. We know those Vandals are going to go crazy just kind of there in the mosh pit. Like I said, they still didn't go ahead and invest it. Obviously, Ezra, you get to find yourself another half ultimate off the back of that, but you couldn't care less. It comes down to a round win, that equilibrium I said that Georgia Tech were kind of going ahead and stretching for. And well, quite frankly, they found it. This is the time where you can really go ahead and make that investment. With the full buy coming out for Florida Orange and with Georgia Tech having a lot more resources available to them, you got to go ahead and make this call of all the feet that you're hearing over there towards B main to kind of see if you can find some extension, at least towards the middle of the map, out of one of your players. But that's just not the case.
Sitting back, Zumba will wait for the call out, sends out the beautiful flash that lines up 2 perfectly. Unfortunately, Ezra was not expecting a 3rd nor a 4th, and it shuts down a lot of the variables for success they were hoping for. Having now to utilize the Hunter's Fury, it's not good enough. Zumba will be detained, and this may be the best odds possible for Florida Orange to guarantee a round even position now in a post plant for a 3v3. Bolt will begin to plant. B sends out the paranoia. Alarm bot cleared away on walkway, and a wonderful shot from B through a smoke unknown as PXL, Atomia with one of their own, and a 2v1 in the back of sight. Alpha Pure has to get down both. They'll tap the spike to tease them in, but both sitting in the corner makes this nearly impossible.
No!
Alpha Pure sprays down both in stride, and Florida Orange will take round 5.
I mean, I said don't line up. I'll give it to them. They didn't, but for the spray, they did a little bit. We can call it that. I mean, still a little unfortunate, though, but even then, the Hunter's Fury, I got to say the investment, I mean, you talked about it. It felt like it didn't really accomplish too much. You got to go ahead and move it towards the back of the map a little bit more so, because either they're on site and that call's being made for you to move it to the right, or they're backing up and you can just shoot a little more to the left. But even then, all things considered, knowing that that's investment, it's not the biggest one you're concerned about, but even then, I'm surprised we didn't see a null command come out a little bit earlier as well as that counter activity. Say they don't have all the utility to pressure now. They can't just obviously run in off a whim. We have nobody towards mid. It's these kind of adjustments Georgia Tech need to make because they're going for very strong holds on either side of the map. They've done a very great job towards B out of Ezra specifically. But now we see that default going ahead and being switched up, knowing that things just kind of went ahead and collapsed underneath them. We now see that default going ahead and being rotated once more. We see a player towards the middle of the map instead, not an operator in those hands, but just yet, maybe it'll be broken out eventually. But as we see right now, once again, that default coming out from Florida. They love this. They love to play that traditional style of Valorant. And even then, when you see Ezra and KO kind of backing each other up, flashes coming from wherever, you're just looking at that information. You're looking to stall. You're looking to get things off. And, well, you don't find anything just yet because still we're sitting at 50 seconds. And once again, Florida has not made contact in the slightest.
The slow and steady strategy from Florida Orange has been somewhat successful. Obviously, GT White have started to clue into that strategy and are now facing more problems on that approach. But if the formula isn't necessarily broken and you know there are glaring weaknesses, adjust upon them and try to find the working variation that will work for you. I think Florida Orange, they still like the last 30 seconds. They're going to play a lot more of a strong arm into sight in comparison to the split that they were going with previously. 0 point goes out for Alpha Pure, charged up easily in the last round if they didn't already have it already. They'll switch down door. Yes, they're spotted by a cam. There are recall bolts sent up and over the top, but they lose first blood still. PXL on the rotate away from the B side gets taken down, and GT White will send out util of their own. The lockdown placed in full effect. Kogan has to engage. Alpha Pure good for another one of their own. Kogan gets a firefight that seemed rough against B, but still can win it. But two are detained, and Ezra may have a free defuse. I don't think there's a way to deny. They're still sticking here to have to. They get the whole thing down. What a play by Bolts! A 1v1 Zumba and Bolts. Zumba will try to stick this Bolt around the corners. What in the world just happened? 2 rounds back to back. GT White the winner this time, though.
You hear the stomps, and you just got to make that timing, quite frankly. I'm kind of with you. You go for that little bit of a stick there, but, I mean, when you run towards back gen, you're not expecting the trail to go ahead and follow up on you, but, I mean, it is what it is. Considering, though, what we were working with, knowing that GT White to pull that thing out, there's plenty of hero moments that were relied on around like that, considering that obviously what was invested once more. Florida Orange still in the backhand of things, I'd say. They found themselves some good rounds. They found themselves some good leniency, but once again, it comes down to these scenarios where we see it once again. This next round, they're only going to have that Blade Storm to work with because of how early it was invested. Meanwhile, GT White still have 2 to play with in their own regard, and it's not going to be too much, but maybe then the Hunter's Fear coming into play eventually. But Ezra still good for those initial picks towards that B side over and over again. This time, not even employing the flash from the KO. So you know that, I mean, these small successes, they're going to add up. That's another gun saved. That's another fight not even having to be taken in the first place. So as we see the kind of whole transition towards the A side of the map, once again, it comes down to a hold. You finally see what's happening inside this tree area of the map, and DJL may be the catalyst to what's going on because he found that first blood with it.
First blood over there towards the B side, and following up in the very next push that Florida Orange put together, getting the kill off just before the paranoia can tag them. It's the slight mistiming from Florida Orange and GT White have seemingly made huge success, major waves off of little and minor mistakes from Florida Orange's side. And that was the same thing, the same reason why we saw Florida Orange come away with wins in the early game. Dallas as well. GT White were making little mistakes in defense. They weren't transitioning fast enough. Callouts weren't being made of an unknown person, an individual. Little things, and Florida Orange were capitalizing, and it's been the exact opposite tale since about round 5, round 6 onwards for the side of GT White, capitalizing on Florida Orange, not playing the ultimates with good time, maybe not swinging well enough, not making good use of space, and when they send out the utility like that last round, moving it a bit too quick before it actually takes full effect.
Well, with that full pressure already going ahead, Inverse sitting towards that B spawn side of the map, you knew the full push coming out towards A. So thankfully, Ezra's gone ahead, found that stance towards the back, able to go ahead and go under health. At least managed 1 kill, surprisingly. But once again, you may be good for another, maybe 3. Who knows? Just already went and stopping the train a little bit shy. You see that 3v2 underway where Georgia Tech, they're not only just winning this round, they are taking it over. Still the majority of their team alive, 3v1 scenario. And they're not giving up too much unless it comes down to Kogan there towards the end. 43 HP in a dream, but it's not going to be enough against the double swing already just kind of dropping on top of you. As I predicted earlier, 7-5 coming to reality, considering that even then Florida Orange found the pistol. Yeah, it's just a little bit odd considering you found that switch up, but it's a good, impressive take here by Georgia White to find that relevancy, and better yet, a lead, even with 2 rounds given up.
Yeah, this is the comeback GT White we're needing, especially for a map like Ascent. We have harped on it so much coming into this. Everyone knows this map. If you're gonna lose it by less than 3. If you're gonna win it, you're gonna win it by less than 3. That's the idea. The game's gonna be close as best as it can, and GT White looked on the back burner. Keep in mind, this was a 5-round start for Florida Orange, where they won 4 out of those 5. The statistics were widely in their favor. Yes, the pistol rounds and the bonus afterwards do greatly assist that stat line, but GT White didn't look like they were truly involved in those rounds in the first place, and even their success in round 3 was short-lived because they had lost 3 players in the process. Florida Orange looked in control, and now look where they are. 1 round since then, and GT White barreling towards them even further as they step over to their attacking side where they're playing the same game Florida Orange did. Very slow, very methodical. They're all sitting over towards B lobby.
This part about the setup all really comes down to the economy and better yet the utility that's being employed, because you're running that double initiator. You go for the slow and steady kind of split. You have players all over the map where it feels like an early recon dart or say an early knife feels almost useless. Like you just know somebody's going to be everywhere, so you're not getting too much of an actual read. You wait for the push to come through, try to go ahead and get these kills where necessary. You find at least one and a little bit of extra damage. So it's always Pixel to at least manage something there, but able to not be enough just yet results in Georgia Tech find themselves a fairly easy plant. This isn't a 5v5 scenario. This isn't a full retake going underway. And better to get on pistol rounds, it becomes more difficult for that retake depending on what you invested early on. So no real employment here out of the KJ utility anymore because of how early she died. That mid coverage isn't there anymore, but everybody is on site set up. And with the triple stack towards Boathouse, you're hoping to just really go ham with the Sheriff if need be. But it may be Zero who does that as well, considering they're the Jet. Maybe then you're kind of asked to do that. But as a Tomio, just going ahead and going crazy here to start things off, and the rest of the team is just following suit.
Ezra, like you said, following suit, gets a much needed kill. Bolt trying to work in from stairs, does get the kill onto Atomiel, but GGL with the refrag towards stairs and another one up towards rafters or walkway side, securing GT White the pistol. Expectations will be that they'll take the bonus here right after to go up to 9. But when they do force her around like this, you expect Florida Orange to make them pay the price, a lot like GT White had done previously. And it's the big question of round 3, how much they'll reforce after the fact. But let's get this second one over with. Guardians, they want distance, Dallas, which I would expect for them to play heavily in towards Courtyard and then transition to the A site, because B is just too darn difficult on the exit from B main and market to play those Guardians well. But once you have it, it's arguably the better site because they have to come from walkway and stairs.
Yeah, you're just testing the waters here, seeing if Marshall's being forced out by any of the Florida Orange players. But I think they learned their lesson already, considering that last half and how things worked out for them. Sure, even with the wins that went underway, keep in mind there's 2 eco rounds that they lost. And I'm not going to blame it on the fact that they lost an eco. It's the fact that we're on an eco in the first place. So many rounds surmounted with so little players sitting at the end of it that you can play out towards long range. You see them just playing it, working with the amount of range they have to work off of, and just kind of flexing themselves towards that B and mid area of the map before they make that inevitable transition over towards the A side. This is, as you mentioned, it's a little bit more open, so the entries aren't really as cut off anymore, but you can still find the necessary kills where need be, and already knowing that door is going to be closed, nobody's going to contest it. This should be a fairly easy hole for them, depending on the angles they hold.
Honestly shocked we didn't see Alpha Pure go for a shot there. They know that Switch got pulled. Maybe the audio was just a little bit whack since they were in the dark cover or something, but they could have taken the right click, gotten some damage off, if not gotten a kill, because the crosshair placement was pristine. But that's all falling apart, and the play from below in a covering shot from DGL. Take down Alpha Pure, who was sitting over towards Tree. I made the comment, got to get through the second round to start talking about the third if they need to make up for any losses. If you don't face any losses, the whole point of my conversation is null and moot. They keep every weapon they had on the board, and these Guardians can play the same distance as these Vandals and arguably be better if they're actually scoping in and know that they have this shot in the distance to work with that they do for the double swing like they just did at the beginning of the last round.
I mean, not even scoping in. Guardians have the most accurate first shot accuracy of any other gun in the game. So, I mean, it's fully, like, there's so much potential just to win out these fights directly here from Georgia Tech White. The only issue is the aggression that you're presenting. You're taking fine, meticulous shots, right, and just kind of spraying things down. And that's where we're going to see, once again, that attention being brought towards the middle of the map. Work towards this catwalk. Look for these long angles. See if anybody overextends. And if they don't, you're once again finding that fight towards Tree. That's an angle that's always being aggressed. If Tree isn't covered, you just push out towards sight. It's looking at these straight lines and taking those fights instead of working out in the open until that post flank goes underway.
Kogan, dark cover to try to keep them away, but a fragment, that's pretty heavy because that forces Alpha Pure away from space. That's a Vandal that can be collected and just control over the region that you no longer have to be concerned with. Avoiding that B site means you don't have to be too concerned about all that KJ utility. They're not going to have the ultimate heading into this round either. So effectively it is a gun up engagement for that Sentinel, and you'll have to be very concerned about the rotation they'll make in through tree, which is why you've left Ezra behind. You can stack your utility there instead. You can wait for the crossfire if needed, and that call out can be made over towards Winery, which will be a bigger factor for success. Ezra goes to the swing alongside PXL, but PXL gets the win, and the shot factor may be here. Bolt down the side. Doomba can't go for it, and you lose B at the same damn time, all the way towards Winery, because they saw the two dark covers and they panic, and it leads to a round win for Florida Orange.
Just impressive takes here from both sides. It was getting on the side. You saw the Georgia Tech didn't really overextend in terms of their expenditure of utility. They just went ahead and kind of played off what Florida Orange was giving them as a piece of information without having to use that 0 point or the recon dart. Just played it slow and steady and letting them play the game for them. Once on that site, though, problem is you look for that reinforcement. You use that 0 point back towards heaven, back towards the back of the map, towards that impending spawn. And then honestly, it's not really too necessary at that point. They're not going for aggression. They're setting up. They're waiting for that retake. You had numbers to play with there, quite frankly, but just kind of giving up a little bit too fast is really what it came down to. Obviously, Ezra in a massive spot to make a play there, but it just didn't get managed. But what does manage to go ahead and come to fruition here is another buy out of Georgia Tech. Those Guardians, the rest of those players, that flawless that surmounted on round 2, it now goes ahead and pays its dividends, considering that you made round 3 pretty darn difficult for Florida, but even then you have a follow-up.
It's crazy how a single person's position in a peak that they make can entirely change the tempo and pacing of a round. Talk about Ezra. They peak too soon. PXL gets that upper hand win against their doppelganger. And the entire A side's defensive position that they were holding for GT Wide is entirely just open for the post plant, open for the rotate in through that tree side. It just needed to be held a little bit more effectively, and GT Wide are aware of that. So they'll avoid the A site now. They'll head in very heavy towards B instead. Do they know PXL is over towards Walkray? They may, considering they had the 0 point go off and suppress. But they still take a look at damage in the process, but they get the kill they needed if it wasn't for the fact that B also goes down on the cross through courtyard, a little bit too slow to join GT White, and it even things out 4v4.
Love seeing those scenarios with the smokes and that sparkling effect. So many players probably hated it, but now they're just blessing the fact it exists in the first place. We consider what's handed to them thus far. 3v3 is really underway here. Good start here from the Alpha crew. And even then, better follow-ups here from everyone. Considering we're seeing a 2v2, you see Omen with absolutely no HP. This could be a better setup here from Georgia Tech White, considering 2 initiators. Those are the most flexible operators in the game of what they can really go ahead and be potential of. But knowing that, once again, that Sova, the Omen, Kogan is only sitting at 5 HP. You spit on this guy and he's dead. It really comes down to who can make the play, and now it comes down to that 2v1 where, quite frankly, you just play the switch, you play the exchange, hold those angles, and win that round next up. So Georgia Tech, we see them extending. We see them hitting that double-digit threshold. What are they going to do with it? Well, quite frankly, looking at the buys across the board, I'd say they have a pretty darn good chance to keep it rolling.
Every time we've said that, though, Dallas, it feels like something gets brought out from the opposing side here in SEL. It happened last week on Sunset, or Pearl, maybe it was at the time. Who freaking knows half the time? We've seen it way too often, and honestly, in a matchup where one of the only victories we saw come out from GT White in the early game that gave them the second round win they needed was a Thrifty. I think it's very much so possible here for Florida Orange as well. 0 point in the early game, something GT White have had to face off against for Florida Orange now 2 rounds back to back. They faced it, got 3 spotted, and they ran away from A. This time, though, they are committed. They have not moved, and they want this site, and they're pivoting their courtyard players appropriately, but this may be rough for Ezra. Timing could be a big factor. 2 players stepping up. They saw them, Ezra! Check your refresh rate on your monitor. You saw him, I'm sure. It requires DJL to swing afterwards, and they'll get that first blood.
Even then, I mean, they weren't aware of that second player. I don't think they got vision on him.
Nobody
checked the back of the map. You see a massive flank coming through here from Pixel that I don't think anybody's really going to expect, but even then, Ezra able to go ahead and hold down that responsibility. Check that flank. Just don't go ahead and get too alleviated for attention. You're checking the middle of the map, not only to see if anybody comes through catwalk, but even then, just go ahead and check that spawn. And this could be a massive pickup when it comes around to Ezra. This is the fight that matters, but even then, it's a classic. You can't freak out what's working, and even then, better yet, Pixel if you can check the right position. Too far left, too far right. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality of the situation. Just like a flawless here to hit 11 on the board. So this is one of the best scenarios you could ask for here for Georgia Tech White. Accumulating more ultimates and no command to work with. Hunter's Fury both going ahead and carrying their own weight on a good aggression to a site, and better yet for for a post plant as well, depending on the kind of angles you're holding there in that post plant and how far you're positioning yourself away. But Florida Orange having, only a bye to work with and a bunch of ultimates of killing for the next one. They could go ahead and surmount a comeback, but it's going to take at least one more round, I think, to really get it going underway.
Honestly, GT White also have 2 ultimates that will come up in this round no matter what it seems like. Ezra at 8 out of 9, Atomiao at 7 out of 8. But like you had mentioned, 2 available right off the back for Florida Orange. The Hunter's Fear would be a big factor. Can be concerned about that type of Blade Storm if you want to save a little bit more eco, but you got to keep the player alive to even have a chance for that. And they go down right off the rip, which would be a big concern defensively as you try to recover from this. Ezra spotted, trapped, send a player in through tree, try to give Ezra some assistance, but they'll just expect the death. The big thing is that Ezra got a 1-for-1 before going down, which just puts GT White in a better position now with the post plant on the A site, and that Sova exceptionally slow to the party as they're just now making their way through defender spawn.
Do you see the shots come out? There's presence towards heaven. You get the owl drone to go ahead and check that. One player's covered, another one's there. You hear all the feet. That the big play's about to come through here on the top of the map. Right above you, quite frankly. But what's going to be done with it? How slow is it going to be of an actual take? And quite frankly, not really all that slow. You know who's on the map. You know the plays you got to work with. And it may actually set up if you get the trade. But DJ Hale's just too good. Doesn't need the assistance. And even after hitting himself with a shock dart, he said, that damage was just there.
I look at that post plant there with 3 players down in hell, and you're thinking about the old Watchmen reference. They're not trapped in here with I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. And GT White were just in trouble. Florida Orange got a kill from below. They had the fragment. They were getting a lot of utility down there. They were just creating a lot of damage and opportunities. It was really rough for GT White sitting down there. And DJL's ability to cover the cross, to get that second swing, deny the second, and get the third afterwards is the perfect transition you're asking for on an attack when your post plant wasn't allowed to solidify the way you necessarily wanted, which seems odd when they had a good 10 seconds, it felt like, Dallas, with free space that maybe they didn't know about to reset up and maybe put a player towards winery, a player in through tree door or something. Either way, they come away with the victory, and it puts them now at match and series point to throw Florida Orange down into the lower brackets, where they may just face another loss and be denied the possibility of making it into the finals.
And you see Georgia Tech not even flinching at the beginning of this round, just holding every single angle around the map, setting up for a very passive default, but quite frankly, they don't care. They're going for a last-second push. That is definitive. You're seeing if anybody overextends. I just want to see where that spike really goes ahead and starts to lean towards, because that hasn't really had too much emphasis towards the site. Just stuck over towards A, but even then, they made the call to say, look, KJ's over there towards B. KO, that little dynamic duo that was excelling on the defensive side. Not really too much an actual worry. And speaking of, what's usually worry is this judge. Big nerfs coming through it here recently. Already, as you see, not 7 rounds in the mag, it's 5 instead. The spread's a little bit more wide, so it really comes down to you can't find nearly as much efficiency as you did usually. But being this close doesn't really matter. You're always at least good for 1.
That's exactly what you need, and exactly what needs to continue from this point onwards. GT White on site. Kogan does scrape away a kill, but not before Alpha Pure faces the same exact fate going the other way. Georgia Tech White playing to the final few 10 seconds of this round before the spike officially does go down, and off for a little bit of that Florida Orange capacity to have Father Time work their way just the same. Hunter's Fury goes out. It looks like another attempt from GT White to copy Florida Orange. They got nowhere near as much success as we saw coming up from the offense of Florida Orange's post plants. And when they did get the man advantage, it goes back the other way as Bolt gets the Guardian kill. Blade Storm out. Tomiao misses everything and still almost gets away with it. Bolt, a 1-for-1 opportunity. DJL has to refrag back. The drop is made! And the flick gets the kill. What a miraculous hit for GT White as they'll move on. Miraculous win against a tough opponent, but they played it so damn well. 13-6, your final scoreline.
Yeah, big differential there, considering on another half, you only get 1. What a massive stance coming here from Georgia Tech. As I mentioned, obviously Florida, when it came around to their entire run, they gave us a kind of greater idea, because as we mentioned, this is one of these actual opponents to where it feels like, oh, this is a week we got to study for. This is a week we got to get ready for. This is something we can just kind of show up and just expect the scrims to do enough for us. We got to do a little bit of research. We got to figure out what we're dealing with. And quite frankly, Georgia Tech just kind of surmounted to be a little bit too much. As you mentioned, first 4 rounds going their way to Florida's side. We saw the differential in score and even an absolute turnaround, just kind of subtracting those pistol rounds, completely mitigating them better yet. It comes down to those points where it's like, we got to turn it up here and to only find 1. even after those last 2 rounds, we saw the flawless here for the second. We saw the difficulty that came around with the third. I mean, it just came to Georgia Tech having also a little bit more hero plays, I would say. DJL there towards Hell, able to go ahead and clean out 3. You see those scenarios where they're saying, look, we're a bit more, we feel better actually on the attacking side. And quite frankly, they just didn't have enough time to exercise it, which is a good thing for them because, well, they got another opponent coming up. And I'm sure they're going to see a set. And you don't want to go ahead and read the attack too much.
I think for GT White as well, when you're looking at their confidence, I think you mentioned it. They were not flinching heading into that last round. They were willing to take angle peaks. They were also playing very confident and sitting back a little bit further where needed. I think for a team to have that confidence and know that they can get away with the 1v1s, I mean, just look at Ezra. They were peaked to 2v1 over there, trapped inside of the link connecting from B main to Courtyard. They were in a really tough spot. They still get the 1-for-1 trade, which just bought even more time for that Sova to have to rotate the whole map over, which just slowed down the retake position from the defense in the round prior. Those were big moments. Their ability to get their 1-for-1s, the highlight ability of an individual to step up and do their role and finish the job that they started. That's huge, and that gives your team the best odds possible. Not everyone can go 3 kills in a round or 4 kills in a round like we saw in round 9, 10, and 13, but you can see confident players get their ones in a role that's not necessarily expected to do exactly that, where utility is king and positioning is your number one factor. Either way, you got your map win. You're moving on. The same thing cannot be said here for Florida Orange. Unfortunately, have to drop down and have to face off against other opponents who've had to feast that same fate. But we don't have to worry about that because we're going to face off against another matchup here in the upper bracket for our next series and our last series of the day here in Dallas against 2 undefeated teams. Don't go anywhere for more.
I see the light inside you, brighter than the skies. Hold on, just let us escape and fly away tonight. We have the world in our sight, and I know together we'll be alright. Can you see forever we will go?
If you thought a 6-3 facing a 6-1 team was a good matchup previously, well, a 7-0 roster facing off against a 7-0 roster should be an even better game. And we don't have to see a cent, as far as I'm aware, down below us on the screen. In fact, they took it out very early. Florida took that as their first ban opportunity following Sunset being removed by Niner Esports. It's Haven, our final map with 3 objectives we'll see get played out here between Niner Esports facing off against Florida's blue roster.
Probably taking notes from the other roster after seeing that result. Maybe it's just a Florida curse. Who knows? They're not going to really deep too into it. But regardless, considering that going into Haven, another one of those kind of gentleman maps. Obviously, I'm going to sound like a douche just saying that about every single map that I'm just tired of seeing. Like, it's a difficult college map. You're going to see it every single week. It's like, isn't that just every map at this point? No. I want Pearl and Sunset. Give it to me. But regardless, Pearl's out of the thing now. So not really likely, but hey, it's no big deal. All things considered, though, when we see stuff kind of start to unravel a little bit more so, I mean, Haven, once again, another one of those tried and true maps. But, I mean, all things considered, I'd say a little bit more flex compared to what we saw in a set. I mean, already looking at the defaults, looking at these kind of lineups we saw from the 2 teams, maybe it's just a play style everyone's really starts to employ here towards this upper bracket area. They don't want to give up too much, as we mentioned, so just go ahead and go for the default. What's there to really miss? What's there to really rate too much of? It's the same old, same old. It's what we've kind of done since the incursion of Valor. But all things considered, knowing that already the default is going to carry a lot more weight here. We talked about this last second hits that were going their way so much in that last game. And Haven doesn't really have that luxury available to it. You want to find pretty quick hits. You want to look for control fairly early because knowing how large that map is, you're not going to have time for rotation. And better yet, same thing for the defense. You got to get your foot onto the pedal and you got to make sure really be hitting that gas because it's the same thing. C is a much further hike over across the map for the likes of A than what we see obviously in B and A when it comes right to ascent. So consider these teams are going to have to be a little bit more reactionary, a lot more emphasis on those long range shots. I'm hoping at least see an operator brought out here in this one because surprisingly we didn't see one employed in the set.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes to the comfortability of the team, so to say, for the operator. But for Haven, you kind of need it, right? It doesn't matter how comfortable you are with it. Defensively, it's way too easy to lock down B with it. C long becomes such an impossible force to be reckoned with if you're trying to push that on the attack against an operator. You're going to need some sort of assistance there. In the old school days, you bring out Chamber and have the tour de force occasionally, and you'd see a Chamber battle and a duo battle over there on C long, and everyone else would just go to A and rush the other way. Yeah. Now it's just operator when it's up, you hold it down, and it's much harder to fight off against because you're not going to pick one up on the attacking side. But for these 2 teams, Niner Esports is no foreign entity when it comes to the SEL broadcast. We saw them last week, Dallas, and we saw them face off against a very solid LA Tech team that got kind of blown out of the water. It was very unexpected to see that. They got dismantled pretty thoroughly by this Niner Esports squad, and then they stepped into game 2 and dismantled their opponent in the lower round to move on and then face off against, who I believe is actually RRG Orange. No, sorry, Clemson Orange. Orange teams galore here. Speaking of Florida as well. And now Florida, who was also not necessarily a foreign entity to the SEL broadcast, though greatly assisted by there being more Florida teams on their repertoire, they're going to have to show something against a team that everyone here for the SEL now has says, this is the team. Niner Esports is more likely than not going to be in the finals, and they could still be in the finals when they lose this series, but you don't want to have to play more games than you have to tie yourself out, and you don't want to be the one that has taken that loss this late when you're both 7-0.
I mean, we're going to see that matchup next week, right? I mean, no matter what, we're looking at the winners, final, kind of getting things running along, and then we get to go ahead and go through all the losers, and whoever wins that obviously gets the luxury of looking at all these teams start to play and just get to sit back and watch for a couple of weeks. But all things considered, I mean, as you mentioned, whether it's Niner Esports, whether it's, University of Florida Blue, Georgia Tech is going to have that luxury to watch this right now. They don't really have a second game to go with. I mean, you can see the bracket laid out for us. Go to the StarGG and just kind of see how everything's laid out. I mean, knowing that even then that they're going to get that luxury to just kind of kick back, understand how this is played, and whether or not Haven wants to even be played by them when it comes around to next week, because that's going to be the week, quite frankly. You talk about contenders for grand finals and really what's going to start to unravel there. Next week is when we really get to see that definitively set. So it really comes down to, I mean, at this point, I don't even really want to kind of guess winners. I would just kind of start to be expecting losers a little bit more so, because we have a lot more to go inside the losers bracket than we do the winners. And it really just comes down to not which one of these teams is going to make it, because they get that luxury, as I mentioned, towards next week. Both those teams, they still get a very far seeding in the lower bracket regardless. So it comes down to who gets to really just kind of have to play a couple extra rounds, who has to win a couple more to get the revenge. And I mean, I'm not going to make any bets here, but I mean, as you mentioned, Niner Esports, they looked outstanding. And I think honestly, they could make a little bit of a run, but Blue could give us a little bit of a surprise as well.
Florida Blue. Is it Florida Blue? I thought this was Florida Orange. Was that the first game? There's too many Floridas,
Orange was the
bro.
first
I
one.
am like losing my mind today. It's so many colors. Plus the SEL colors are just blue in the first place and white and yellow. We got a lot going on here. Either way, and I'm colorblind, so it all just makes it even worse. Either way, you mentioned, hey, we just talk about the 3 objectives. The agent selection is going to be very important. And one thing that I am very shocked about was that Viper pick.
Yeah.
What was that
Because
shot?
I was just looking at it, I was like paying attention to bracket, explaining stuff. Didn't really get to see agent selection too much because I'm not gonna lie, we have a tendency to like see it for the last couple of seconds, and I'm like, he's gonna get time to talk about it. We'll talk about it in the first round. I'm with you, yeah. So this is pretty darn surprising, I'd say. Even then, the Rays with the nade nerf that came through as well. That's another one we didn't mention because we didn't see it in the last map. That's abysmal. Like, what do we have left now, right? Jet's dead. Rays is dead.
Jet's dead. Quotations.
Quote unquote.
Yeah, she's still really
That's
good.
a good spot.
There's I mean, I would love Neon personally on the map of Haven. We've highlighted this so many times. Neon is beyond entertaining.
Shout out
for this
Auburn
map.
for that, bro.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness. I think UAB started employed as well, just because they're good enough to do so. But first blood in this series, Irish Esports versus Florida Blue. Woo! Share shot from downtown knocks and humbles a Florida player very early in this series. Niner Esports will fall back off the back of that kill and thinking, look at it falling back. Look at the C site right now for the side of Niner Esports. There's no one near it. They're sitting over towards the link side. They're sitting in defender spawn. They are giving up full control of C, and they're just going to play for a retake if it happens to hit that objective. But Spike is deep down A long. I think they're wanting A.
I mean, can't really blame him. Already get the spike over towards that side of the map. You do have 50 seconds remaining, so you can really go ahead and make leeway anywhere. If anything, I would probably make a gamble towards that C site, knowing that even then Owen had the peak. Didn't see anybody really extending there, but still, hey, you're going to have a lot of reinforcements there, just purely because of that initial fight. You saw the player there, you took the shot, you found the kill, and you're looking to kind of work off these numbers you have remaining because they're not going to expect to double down. And quite frankly, an Owl Drone will give you all the information to let you know, yeah, they're going to double down. So already going ahead, looking for presence on the site, looking to find every necessary kill. It's not really going to work out for him too much. Still, and short to go ahead and manage 2. A good leniency there for him, but I mean, finding almost nearly a third with the collaboration of Niner Esports clear house when it comes around to the first round. Looking for a pretty darn clean second, if I do say so myself, considering that one player resulted in a little bit of stranded kills, creating the opportunity to buy maybe a bigger gun.
You know, it would have been a really cool update that Riot could have pulled out for like Halloween and whatnot. Every map having a night variant, just an opposite variant of what it is. That'd be really cool
That
to see
sounds
Haven.
terrible.
It would be terrible. Yeah, I mean, you
That
wouldn't keep
genuinely
it, but it'd be
sounds
like a
like-
Halloween update. Be kind of interesting. I know R6 does that, and CSGO will sometimes reverse the map, which is really wacky. I've seen a couple clips about that. But it would have been interesting, and I'd love to see the difference in the map and the visual quality of it. Niner Esports don't need any differences for visual quality. Them getting that first blood early kind of opened up the rest of the round for themselves, and they kept that maintained that man advantage where needed. This round, though, have not yet gotten that same lap of luxury. They know Florida's pushing in through short. They've heard the shots. They've seen the utility, and they've sent some back that way. And this single dark cover has been an absolute gatekeeper for Florida Blue. They're respecting that space that's created by that, and they are holding back very heavily.
Yeah, still looking to double down the A site. But I mean, when you talk about the close range, it's either A or B. You're never really going for C here. So quite frankly, you can find an early rotation when it comes down to that Viper, which is already kind of being employed to a certain degree. But even then more so, you probably hear the shots ring true, and it starts to go ahead and pull off not only 2, but 3 with that little wombo combo. It's always faster to pull out your secondary than reload. So
Thanks, God.
no, and already 4v1, knocked down the last one from Mayor. A very, very swift round here for Niner Esports. So once again, hold on to 4, carrying on to the next. So a pretty clean start here, I'd say, from Niner Esports, not only in regards to the first blood, but they're just kind of cleaning things up and making sure it's executed well, because even the players that are sitting at the end, they seem to be pretty untainted in their health pool, which is always kind of a nice little inch there to give you yourself that confidence. Say, look, we can either save some armor, save some extra utility, just knowing that we can swing and be confident about those because we win them more times than not.
2-0 start for Niner Esports as expected, and they took very few losses in that previous round. Talk about space control on the A side. I would expect Florida Blue to go anywhere else, but they really like A. They are not giving it up just yet. Owl Drone around the corner, followed very quickly. This is R6 style of drone work, and A-Star is going to have their money cut out for them around this corner. A player an inch away from them, and I think they're aware of it. They'll let third was there, but it's so close, but still so far. Pate has has to refrag Sika after they took down Fizz and finished the job started by Anishar. A
Spike
3
planted.
versus 2 player up in heaven and a flank coming from short. May just prove a problem child for the side of Florida Blue, but the weapon distance advantage may not be enough.
Oh
It is
my
enough.
God.
How the hell does Halibel let that one slip through their fingertips? It's just paint. 1v3, stuck down in hell.
Oh my
dropped upon
God.
by Niner, and the round will fall 3 in a row for them.
A scenario where there's 3 players alive. You have a gun, but good God, you got 3 things to look at the same time. You just don't have enough arms or enough eyes to cover every single corner. So a huge start here for Niner Esports, starting 3-0. And once again, at the end of that 3rd round, having 3 players remaining. I mean, just a massive start. It really comes down, obviously, to not reading that Omi. You saw the shot dart go there towards A Sewers. Look to check that corner. Problem is, it's a 50-50. You've used the utility on one side, so if you think somebody's there, you still gotta check it, brother. You just learned that lesson the hard way, and let's go ahead and see how many angles they check for the rest of the game, because obviously, any of these Niner players could be hiding absolutely anywhere, and quite frankly, on another eco round coming over here from Florida Blue, they're gonna have to double down, because then they're working with much better guns handed over by yours truly.
Oh, this is a really rough start for a team with a lot of expectations on their shoulders. And I think we talked about it so heavily in the previous series about how it seemed like Florida had an easier bracket to get there. I would not say that about this Florida Blue side, right? I would not say they had a very easy bracket to get here. The FAU Owls was a little bit tougher. Still an easy game, I would think, for Florida. USC Gamecocks, they took them down very well. They handled it. I do still think Niner Esports had a tougher start. UTK is not a team you necessarily sleep on, but the Louisiana Tech game, which is the one we had a lot of expectation for, and they thoroughly tore them asunder. It was not even a chance, it felt like, for LA Tech to come back into that one. Niner have had a tougher time about it, but it seems like they made quick work of those opponents, and Florida Blue's done the same thing because their opponents were a little bit easier. So both Florida teams have had a smaller for Florida Blue, but much wider for Florida Orange time through this playoff side. And it looks like both may have to worry about getting dropped to the lower and facing off against each other at the end of the day.
Yeah, a little bit of standstill going on here currently. Mayor holding things out there towards that B side, just looking to get out with their life, and even then it's not going to be the result they're looking for. But with full stingers here from the side of Florida Blue, that's going to be your best chance. I'll talk about how good B is when it comes down to these close quarter scenarios. Nobody really challenging the A side of the map, but finally Niners are getting a read of what's going on towards that C side and able to go ahead and at least manage a couple of kills before falling in their own right. That's a lot of guns to pick up here for the likes of Florida Blue, but even in the armor, it's going to be a very, very big differential to really set in. Knowing that Phantom's still going to go ahead and employ a one-shot kill its way with 125, it's just as good, if not better than Vandal right now. Just comes down to whether or not can you find those shots. So one's already cleared up, the second one as well. Sika's just going ahead and clutching things together. He's going to check the right angle, but you got your Owen there to go ahead and find the finishing shot with only 2 HP remaining. Still, no real stress here for Niners because they've won 3. They can do it at least one more against an eco.
This is unbelievable how close Florida Blue got in that round. That is ridiculous. Niner Esports step up to the plate again and send a home run, though it was still costly. I think the round 3 victory set them up economically, though, and they're continuing to ride that momentum, ride that wave. Mayor here with the operator, you'd expect it, and you see it come out in full force. The question is going to be where you put it down. I mentioned C Long. You tend to defend that objective solo if you have that operator, but I also mentioned top of B platform when you want to hold back a team from taking control of Courtyard. A Long's also pretty good, but I think the defense for Niner Esports has been indomitable, Dallas, when it comes to the holds from long as well as in through short, letting Florida take that space before taking them out after the fact. And they're going to do the exact same thing here. And they lost their soft arm player over towards C Long with the operator shot to find him. Good
stance here already once again. Niner Esports, very successful in these initial bloods, but seems like a little bit of a caster curse comes out there for Anishar. So a little unfortunate, but still, you got even numbers. Comes down to the rest of this team, what they're going to do with this A site. Quite frankly, Sika doesn't stand too much of a chance when it comes around to not killing that player, but still can manage it regardless, finding that trade in the meantime. So a 3v3 comes down fully to the retake. Are you going to look for a flank? No, that's not even an option, but yet you have 2 players setting up back forward spawn, see if they can find a little bit of a pinch and maybe execute some trades here with Xiong sitting in the middle of that hell section of the A site. So things are feasible here. With another flash available in Aftershock, you can definitely buy time, and quite frankly, wouldn't blame to go ahead and pop it now, knowing that time is going to be ticking, or whether or not you're waiting. But already, once again, talking about it, just buying that time when it can be done, and even then the flash should be employed as well. So just once again, utility dump, do what you can, and let Mayor just run you over.
Oh my goodness. It continues. Niner Esports, an unstoppable force against a very movable object that is Florida Blue. Knight got it to half. Is there time for Mare to stick this? I don't think there is. It'll be just enough. And the wherewithal there, Dallas, to realize that your target priority was the person defusing the spike and not the one staring at you. You knew you had them with the paranoia short sights. You just closed the gap. Take down the appropriate opponents and a net Florida Blue their first round win where needed, and an exceptionally costly one considering what had to be invested from Niner Esports previously. But the operator player can just bring out a Blade Storm here and save the eco that we're hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's still dying in the meantime, so not really the biggest loss in the world, considering, I mean, as you mentioned, the Tour de Force can now be employed here from the side in Florida Blue. Yeah, the Viper could just go ahead and kind of keep things close quarters for that C side of the map, so you're just looking to lock things down. Once again, just fight for time early on. And even then, once again, go ahead and just completely alleviate the detention from the C side of the map. There's been a lot of stress here and a lot of eyes kind of peeking that I'm sure the Vipers picked up on, but still, where do you go? Where are you going to go if you're Florida Blue? Back to the A side, because you're 1 for 4 on it. That's a pretty good odd, right? 1 for 4. I like a 25% win rate too, so we're just going to try it once more.
25% of the time works 100% of the time. You know?
Just, dude.
It's something new on your repertoire, on your plate. Anishar, who came into this one with only a sheriff, might I add, knows their role. And their role is to get information early, even if it costs them their life. Mare, though, who had only a Blade Storm, I don't know what they're doing, but they get the kill they were asking for. And they'll toss back the Vandal that was dropped previously. That loss of life for Niner Esports doesn't do much for them, though. It doesn't feel like it makes an impact because it was a 1-and-1 trade. Now Niner Esports are just back at that disadvantage, and it's not like you saw Mare bring out a weapon in the first place. That can't be tossed to Anishar like Florida Blue do back the other way, when now every player left standing has a proper rifle to work with. Anishar up close, though. Paranoia at the ready. 20 seconds left. Sends it down the lane. There's no dark cover to cover space, and Halibel barely able to get back the other way. Seekers go out, and they'll tag, giving Seeka space, but they lose against Aiden. Huge missteps, and the timing is perfect for Florida Blue to take sight and plant with enough time left.
A little stressful there. I gotta say, I gotta give it over to the likes of the Chamber. Going ahead and giving up that Tour de Force there for a little bit to go ahead and opt for that Vandal. A lot of Chambers have a problem doing that. They're saying, oh, it's a utility round. I'm just use my ultimate. Never gonna use the gun. But I mean, still able to go ahead and use that variety. Probably going and holding back towards A main with that Tour de Force once more. But still, considering the options that are available here to work with, you gotta see what can at least be made expensive. Able to go ahead and find one. The second one there, kind of go ahead and looking for the lineup, but still, a third's going to shut you down. So second round coming consecutively here for Florida Blue. Good looks for them, and considering that even at the last round, they lost everybody in the meantime, but it's not really seeming to beat them up too much.
Whew. 4-2 are split so far in Florida Blue. What is that now? 33% that side? I mean,
It was 1 out of 4, now it's 2 out of 5, so 40. We're getting there.
We're getting there. It's climbing up. Numbers continue to add up. You'll never reach 100%, though. You've already ruined that.
Yeah.
You can get exceptionally close, but you can never touch, like tangent lines in math. And your teacher always explained it. They're like 2 lost levers that can never once touch.
Math in 6 years, Chief. Don't even try.
Really? You didn't have a beginner's math course you had to take in college, or did you just do those in high school?
I did those in high school, man.
I
got
did
it
too,
all
and I
out
still
of the
had to
way.
do it. Dude, Calhoun Community College screwed me so bad. None of my credits carried over as well. They really did me dirty. Speaking of getting done dirty, Rolling Thunder comes out, and it really pains Knights. They'll be snapped up by it. Precise has to refrag. Good for it, but it will not stop the plant from going down in Florida Blue. Control over the seaside.
Yeah, I mean, big hits here already going underway. I mean, a huge switch up here from the likes of Florida Blue going to the opposite side of the map. After 2 successful rounds, it could be a pretty good stance for them. They have kind of the guns to work with here. But the biggest thing is Mare on that flank already with the operator, seeing that little trademark set up and see if anybody's going to overextend for it. But now having that Sova peek and taking way too long to whip out that gun, you go ahead and bite the dust because of it. Considering the 4v2 is now underway, you see Florida just holding on to things, looking with a pretty good stance in a 1v3, now having the overwhelming numbers, and Seeka needs to reload because you got 3 players to kill and you only got 2 bullets to do it. Now make it 1. That's not going to be done. You're going to look for an escape route, but somebody's already gone ahead and closed it and made sure that you were surrounded because, well, quite frankly, you don't anything carrying over to the next one. 4v3 now here on the board. Good stance for Florida Blue is a little bit of a retaliation, and better yet for all 3 of those to be back to back to back and holding on to 3 in that last one. Their economy is really starting to kind of feel the effects of their success here.
when you start to get that rolling momentum further in your favor, things tend to trickle pretty fervently that way until the Niner Esports side can find something underneath themselves, and that has not been the case. And in fact, look at this round here. They're coming in with Sheriffs. They do not have much to the board. They're trying to make space early. One player through garage door. A Toxic Cream was also laid there from back at platform. A lot of time needed to set that up, but if you can get it, it works well for yourself. Mayor using the distraction from garage door takes control of the player position right by Haybill and has assistance. But I think the damage is impossible to overcome, especially when that guiding light went nowhere in through that hay side. And I think they just barely got spotted retreating back through garage, and that was 2 players there. And I think that Florida Blue realized that, and they're going to start to pivot that spike closer towards A, where there is nobody for Niner Esports actively defending that objective.
Which is wild considering how many rounds you do that. I mean, Florida Blue is loving that thing. They may actually bump up their percentage a little bit more, but it comes down to whether or not they can actually find the execution and, more importantly, the hold. As much as you'd like to talk about the kind of retake capability of this A side on Haven, I mean, still, we see some great holds by a lot of teams. I think it just comes down to this kind of focus of this A side because of how much difficult it is to take initially and how many players and how many close angles there are just going to close out everybody necessary. A 5v5 retake will be underway here. A little bit of a interesting circumstance to say the least, but then again, Niner doesn't have all the guns in the world, so we can see what they can possibly pull out. They got a first gun they could possibly take off Halibel, though.
Halibel is playing exceptionally close. We have a lot of numbers. Sometimes the numbers can get you kills, and it will work out. Wow. Marin Precise, each good for a piece, and Ishar just gets spotted towards hallway and has to escape for there very swiftly, and Zika almost took advantage of that control. But it will not matter. A 3v1. Niner Esports very well may just get this round under their belt. Do they spot the opposing end? They don't, but it will not matter. What a thrifty round for Niner Esports Dallas. One of the cleanest ones you can possibly ask for on a retaking A site on Haven. And it puts them up to 5 and makes up for the losses they've been facing back-to-back against Florida Blue.
Now at 33%, a little unfortunate, but hey, we'll give it another go. If you know Florida Blue, they're gonna give it another go. I mean, look at them. They already got 3 players. They're putting the spike down towards that side of the map. Can't blame them if they want to go to that side once more. They want to go ahead and see if they can nail it down, but still, there's got to be a point where you kind of learn your lesson, flex your wings a little bit, and see where else you can go on the map. You found success towards that C site, so I wouldn't blame you to kind of go there again now with the full purchase coming out, but even more so, kind of looking for a flex through that middle of the map, knowing if you can knock down that casual utility, you B is an option, C is an option, you open the map plenty more so, knowing that you're just going to kind of neglect A in the meantime where you see a triple stack.
Speaking of neglecting things, so heavy was the control in garage for Niner Esports the round prior, and it's completely empty this time around. Now putting the side of Florida Blue in a good stance to swing in through garage and try to control that space, but they are very wary of the toxic screen. They can see the pebbles littering the floorboards of the entrance here, and the utility they've already had to clear. They're being very precipitous. They're waiting to trickle in slowly. And they want to make sure the control over towards C long can be established as well. And their Silva is trusting in that ground. And speaking of trust, there is none here. One player watching the rush in through courtyard for Niner Esports. Down goes through the box. What the hell was that shot from Precise? What in the world? It does give that player advantage back to Niner Esports after a very aggressive stance through B lobby.
Those fights not really going Florida Blues way, so they want to take their attention to somewhere else in the map. Funny enough, though, the players that you ran into that were there towards middle B, where'd they escape to? They know they got utility back towards B. You had the players going in section towards that garage area of the map. Not going to be a quick enough exchange going on there. And with a little bit of utility going in and funneling out, you know that, oh, let's go ahead and watch A main. They're going to go for it again. And see how much success they have here. With Sika going ahead and being present on site, exchanges coming through, damage going out, and even then, more so an actual flash there to back things up. You got so many resources here to shut that down once more. So Florida Blue, another attempt on A site, and another unsuccessful one in the meantime. Sitting now, Niner Esports is 6-3 on the board, already guaranteeing themselves at even half.
This is the best start for Niner Esports they could ask for. Give a little, but take a lot in the same fell swoop. And you're looking at Florida Blue, who already had to answer for the crimes against Valorant humanity. They've had to do so previously, letting Niner Esports get that thrifty round recovery. That's now thrown things back their way again. Look what they have to do to themselves. Another thrifty round. Stingers could be effective, but you'll also have to get pretty darn close to do so. And where do you do if you need to get close? B site, baby. Swing yourself forward, take control of the objective, and hold that ground all IL. And they're doing so very well. Clearing turret up in top corner, getting that spike down, close enough for a late position on A. And maybe you would see them rotate if they bring spike there over to the A site in general, but they opt to forego it. This is where that lockdown keeps all the problems for Florida Blue back in their faces. It'll keep them away from the objective. And the guiding lights and engagement from Niner Esports can take control of the objective and take that link side from both ends. And it's working out so well. A 3 versus 2. Backing Doe with a stinger, though. Paint finds 2 of their own and leaves it up still with all Aiden in their hands. Gets the shot to Mare, but Knight shuts it down. Good kills.
Good trades there. Going ahead, and once again, we see Niner Esports being nearly a professional when it comes around to putting yourself on your toes when it comes down to that clock. Every single time they have the resources to pressure that spike, make you swing. And I mean, that's one of the most horrendous things Florida Blue has had to go ahead and undertake inside this game. It just feels a little bit too difficult when you have to think on your toes, be all over the place, push that spike, and knowing that there's plenty of players in between you and that position. You don't know whether or not they're ready to trade, whether or not they're actually defusing. And more times than not, they actually do go ahead and find at least a half, just kind of swinging things off, looking for these weird plays, these kind of swinging jiggle picks, where you just really can't do too much except for just push and hope it really finds some level of success. A big read coming out here, though, for the likes of the team once more. The operator standing towards that C side, but I think Mayor's learned his lesson now, having 2 operators, but 2 operators immediately dropped in the first blood of the round. So probably not going to do that too much more so going forward, but hey, Florida Blue, they had themselves a plant, so it just comes down to holding the post, and quite frankly, done it successfully once.
Knight will be forced to fall back. Florida Blue know they have the positions they need to work from and dominate from, and Knight and the rest of the Niner Esports side will have trouble getting in. Knight, though, huge shots to paint. The variation in distance, variation in height was not enough to keep them back, and Seong is too close to the fight. Precise in on the through the hall, and what the heck just happened? Florida Blue, your positioning was poor, and Niner Esports, they even caught out your well-played players like Paint up top with the height variation. Seong way too darn close to the fight when they could have fallen back over there towards Cubby. Talk about your post plans, because that's all your attack has, and you only have one more round to do it.
Oh man, it's just a whole hassle here for Florida Blue here today so
It's
far.
rough.
Not really looking for the best start, but it's already going ahead and going down 4-0. You find 3 consecutive, and quite frankly, at a point like this, it feels like that's all you're going to really get. Working with some kind of iffy stance in terms of the buys so far here for this last round. Half armors, or even then better yet, full armor. You're just compensating by buying a legit weapon, or at least somewhat of a weapon. But, I mean, just a lot of sacrifices that have to be made here, quite frankly. And already the shutdown to be employed over here towards that C site. You see that toxic bubble going up, creating that blockade. The snake bite there as well. A little bit of flank to be employed by the likes of Mayor. Let's see if this guy's the first one to die in this round. It's a little questionable, but still just kind of holding out that angle, making sure nobody gets too crazy.
Shots spurling out towards the seaside, and despite the fact you see Florida Blue get that first blood, they can't engage where they wanted to. Mayor, what an engagement. They know they have the Blade Storm. They had an operator to follow suit. A 2-for-1 special. And Sika lets one pass, but needed to do more. Not enough 1-for-1 again, as an Ishar gets their one, needs a second and finds it. Niner Esports 9-3 special, serving up Florida Blue in a platter, and they are an all-you-can-eat buffet if every player can get their kills.
Surprising thing is the defensive side going ahead and getting that stance of 9 there. You expect on the attacking side, knowing all those kind of options that are let out in front of you, but once again, when you have 3 options and you really only want 1, that A site doesn't really treat you too well. So all things considered, going into moving things on, you do see once again now Florida Blue being on the defensive side of the map, going to have to employ that chamber to a certain degree. I'm sure that operator may come out a little bit more early than what we saw from the likes of Mare early on, but even now in a stance like this in the game, you may not even have that luxury, quite frankly. If you see a 3-0, once again, 4-0 start early on. So you got to make sure to really hold yourself here. You got to find at least a couple rounds, because even then, if you find 1, that's a lot of breathing room that you can play with.
Breathing room. But at this point in time, it's starting to get a little bit, starting to get a little hot in here. I should think it's starting to suffocate you. The pressure is on. And Florida Blue, yeah, they know they've got some wiggle room if they lose this and get dropped down to the lower side. But they'll have to face off against a team they're not hoping for. Also, somebody please fix the start.gg page. Apparently, Niner Esports did not check in, so they're marked as a DQ. And with the way this scoreline is going, that is going to be the opposite result at the end of the day. they're going to have to face off against either RRG Orange or Kennesaw State. And that is a matchup that I think is going to be tough. The winner of that one has already been tested, but the winner we saw in our previous series just earlier today, Kennesaw State had already lost to Georgia Tech White. We know RRG had already lost to Florida Orange. I don't think that'll be a tough battle for Florida Blue, which means they may have to face their same team, Florida Orange, in that losers final, or semifinal, I should say, as it's one more over. And then they have to play this losers final as well to get over and try to see how the Grands goes after the fact. And that's just too many games, and Florida do not want to be tested.
Well, good start here, at least for the TKR, coming out from Niner Esports. A little bit slow there to start things off, but they just want to make sure they had everything put into place when they all needs to come together. They put every single piece of the puzzle kind of in that frame, and the rest of it, they just kind of plop on top of it. So considering now that they found themselves the result they're looking for, numbers advantage spike down, it all comes down once again to Fizz. You can't pressure that timer anymore, at least on the attacking side, because so long as you plan it, you've done your job. And you just make sure to kind of see where that last player's lingering about to close things off. So for 10-3 start, Niner Esports, once again, we talk about these kind of stances. Pistol or 9-3 curses always just occur off the back of that singular pistol round, just kind of continuing that train and then locking players out towards 10. But when they usually win that pistol round and get themselves another round off the back of it, you're usually not too concerned because you're saying, all right, we're sitting at 11 and 9 and 10 are kind of those toughest humps to get past.
Double digits acquired, but it is just the pistol that gets you there, like you've mentioned in Forlade. Great utility being dumped out by Florida, but it seems just a distraction, honestly. They send it in from B to get that connection over towards shorts. It's one thing about Breach, as many walls and corners as there may be, that utility finds even more impact. Paint shells tossed down by Paint. How ironic that may be. And it is still Niner Esports to get that first blood. Knight gets their kill. Paint forced back ever so slowly, and a lot of more utility being burned away. A lot of damage, honestly, brought forward. But when you have a Sky, which Florida Blue are lacking, the regrowth just puts them back up to full.
Regrowth offers so much inside this. I mean, that's why Sky is just... She's so wonderful. I don't only say that because she's a redhead, but because of everything she provides in terms of utility. It's truly just a blessing of an actual agent. All things considered, though, regardless, another miracle going ahead and occurring there. A Stinger kill being resulted in the meantime. A little bit of short-range weapon that still finds a lot of results in terms of impact in a round like this. Big exchanges going back and forth on the A site, and once again, inevitably, Niner Esports coming out with a 3v1 scenario. Feels like these are just a little bit too consistent for them, and even then, knowing the next round that's going to go underway after these Stinger forces coming out here from Florida Blue, they understood the stakes, but quite frankly, they just can't beat their maker. Already 11-3 here for Niner Esports. It looks like we're kind of meeting those end times as we start to kind of close things up with those guns being held onto.
You get your bonus. It just puts you in a really even more uncomfortable spot. 9-3 is recoverable because you take the piss and the bonus. It quickly becomes 9-5. You give them the 10th for the third round, and you go 10-5. It's only half the score line. It just becomes very easy. That's just not the case here, especially when you're looking at way Florida Blue bought up in that last round, the way they chose. What are they bringing in this one? Soft armors, classics, Buckies. They gotta push Dallas, and they just cannot do so because Niner Esports will just gun them down to the corner because they're still gonna be rocking those SMGs too, and they have the space and the wherewithal to hit those shots where needed. And even the Bulldog from Anisha, we've seen that be effective in both series today. It just gets worse. The only thing you have is the utility from the Yeoman who can blade that up from across the screen. And the Headhunter from Aiden on the flank, which gets 2. Expensive, but it gets 2.
Yeah, we like to take place in a little trolling over here. A little mess around. Even then, Halibel getting their fair share of it as well. Who knew that all it took to win a round was finding very odd guns? Just kind of put yourself in the most random places of the map.
Hey, if they don't know what you're doing, or if we don't know what we're doing, they don't know what we're doing, right? The old U.S. military strategy.
Just the U.S.?
I don't know. I think it was like an old thing that was brought up. They other countries were asked how they would fare against like the United States military. They said that the military strategy for the U.S. was very different in the fact that if they don't know what they're doing, we don't know what they're doing, and it's a winning strategy. So pretty famous quote. I'm sure somebody will bring it up. I'm pretty sure that's the exact quote for it, but somewhere in there lines. Yeah.
It's also because it's like it's not voluntary here, so it's kind of like like over there they're requiring people, so you get people that aren't really fit for. Or we're not getting the,
cool. I was just having this conversation yesterday.
On broadcast?
No.
I was about to say, we're going down a dark road here.
They're talking about like Korea's got voluntary service, and you know, like it makes college very difficult, but you can get out of voluntary service, do esports now there, which is really cool. That's how the conversation goes.
Yeah, that is if you're an Olympic player
Yeah,
level,
if you're an
like
Olympic level
Faker,
player.
who's the best of all time. Yeah. Just so
You
easy.
really gotta be
Become
the king of
best
League of
ever
Legends.
in league to win 4 championships by your 20s. I could do that. Yeah. When I moved to Korea, that's it. I'm just making a league player. A professional
I
one
don't
at
think
that.
they're trying to make you do voluntary service there, Dallas.
No, I'm talking for my kid, man.
Oh, okay.
I'm settling down in Korea. That's
He's
set in
naturalizing.
stone. Regardless, though, who's not set right now? Niners. Oddly enough, once again,
segue.
in a 4v5. Why do I gotta make a segue for everything, man? I can just talk about the game, right? We can switch it up. There's nothing happening.
It's real.
So I'm trying to just lead into it. It's a 2v5. We got players sitting back towards spawn, more than likely saving. So, I mean, let's be real here.
For
And it's a
45
controller and a
seconds.
sentinel. What are they going to do?
Kill.
Players who
die.
overextend. But Florida Blues had a very, very rough time so far. They have not had nearly enough money to afford these things. And they barely got to this point in the first place after that last one being a thrifty.
30 seconds left.
Yeah, they're going to sit back. There is no reason to test the limits here. Especially when you don't know for sure what they're bringing to the table. It just stinks that it's a minute-long experience for Niner Esports to start off this round so darn poorly. It doesn't matter, though. Florida Blue are happy, and their fans are happy, I'm sure. They'll climb up to 5, which is still just less than half the total stat line of Niner Esports. And this is one of those scenarios, Dust, we've highlighted a lot for saving teams and saving players. When you save, you almost force your team's hand to build around what those saving agents had, whether that's a single player with an operator, which was a big problem we saw last week on Lotus, or was on Pearl. No, Sunset. It was Sunset. Sorry, last week on Sunset, would that be a really big problem with operator getting saved like 4 times in a row? And that was something that is an issue, and I think for Niner Esports, 2 rifles kind of forces the hands of the other players as well, and they don't have the eco to even get close to doing that. So they're going to call a timeout and talk things through, which is just 2 minutes now of time that Niner Esports could have been chatting themselves away. So yaps a lot on the Niner Esports side.
And a lot of yapping that can go on for us here, but that's just not going to be the case.
We're
already
hired
expended
to
our
yap.
times. I mean, yeah.
We're still
but
barely
at
doing
least
it.
stay on topic. I mean, I guess we could make that relation. We did do it at some point, but I mean, still, staying on the game though. Better yet, I mean, Florida Blue. It's just one of those scenarios where we haven't seen too many successes out of them so far. That even then, the kind of successes they found were a little bit out of left field, so we couldn't really break it down to a certain degree. It just feels like Florida, as you mentioned. I mean, if they don't know what they're doing, we sure as heck aren't going to know what they're doing. And I mean, they're just getting odd about it. They're finding these weird angles. They're just kind of playing the game a little bit differently, but still. I got to go ahead and give credit to Niner Esports for not at least just trying, because a lot of teams, you see them get stuck in this mindset. We're saying, we're rolling these guys over. We're doing really well. We're really finding our stance here. Let's just go ahead and keep on pushing and pushing and pushing. When they understand that, quite frankly, in a round like this, I mean, you're up 6 rounds. You don't need to freak out. You don't have to go ahead and say, look, let's just kind of push and past their limit. If you keep on tripping on that because you're not finding, you're not in that same momentum, you're going to be the one losing the game inevitably. So Niners to go ahead and kind of take this time out, take this time to slow down, not really give that advantage over to Florida Blue, and then once again put their pedal to the metal. It's a good switch up here that they really need to establish themselves once more, finding early plant over towards that B side. But I swear, I think Mare needs to back up, because I get it. You have a Vandal, you're strong, but somebody else has to pick that up.
Mare's going to be in behind Gong. Needs teammates to be there too. Has some assistance from their Sky, but an Owl Drone over on the side of Link towards A will deny information and intel. Aiden kept back from a snake bite. The Viper is really working out for Niner Esports in a difficult round like this. This is very effective for time, but once the sing gets sung and you got to start to engage, the pressure has to be rolled up quickly. Mare barely made it into town, but not good enough for long enough. Aiden gets the 2-for-1 special they were hoping for. And Niner Esports, can they stop this? I don't think they can. Denied. Aiden, 4 kills in this round. No way! Did he even hop off? Was it just too late to the party? How
That's
does that
9 for you,
happen?
man. He said, "Look, I'm gonna do it." He's only called the time. He said, "I got an idea.
Caution
What if they
here.
just don't touch side?"
What if they just don't touch the objective?
And I mean, Vipers are sure good for it.
You know that spike we got to put down on set? What if they just don't touch that?
What if they just don't get a chance to look at it?
What if we just keep them away from it?
What if I just turn into Mr. Nickelodeon himself and just throw green all over the place? Ain't
What if I
nobody gonna see
slime them? I cannot believe that from Niner Esports. And to make matters worse, everyone in Florida Blue died. They thought they had gotten it, right? They thought it was a sure thing. Everyone died, which means that it's not the best thing in the world, but it at least means that it's a bit harder for them to buy. And it makes this a very doable round heading in for the 13th and series point for this. Niner Esports plant is down. And it's a 3v3. The Hunter's Fury puts a lot of pressure to force Sika into the line of sight of Song. Precise not winning this 1v1 against Sarang as well. This is really rough. Flash to zone. Precise still gets paid. Precise gets a second A 4K for Precise. And Fizz away one. No way stays at Ishar. And the game keeps rolling with Florida Blue. Hopefully getting the defuse this time around.
Oh man. Oh man. It's always those kinds of rounds, man. It's that point where you gotta start standing up, start exercising yourself a little bit to say, oh, this thing could be over with. But I mean, it's just 1v1s over and over and over. And even in Florida Blue, I gotta say their connections, they were great. I mean, that was kind of one of the better plays and kind of holds I've seen out of the entire game from them so far. Finding the connection towards Garage, understanding when a player's low or how tagged they are, waiting for those exchanges that felt very like Niner when it came around to their defensive side on the retakes as well. So
yeah,
knowing it was there for a hold, even then more so the Hunter's Fury, just kind of forcing players back towards spawn. You got another player waiting, and everything just started to really connect there, which I got to give props to Florida for. Even then, once again, forcing another eco to come up for Niner Esports. Still a 6-round differential, but I mean, knowing that their last round won here within the past couple, it feels, was only off the back of what felt like just Florida not being confident enough. And quite frankly, when the ball is yours, when the spotlight is yours, you got to shine a little bit. And we've seen specs of that, but it just doesn't feel like it's really there to stay yet.
When success is just freckled here and there in the series, it's hard to envision Florida Blue coming away with a win at the end of the day. But I mean, we're looking at a position where these teams are worked all the way through the entirety of SEL, and it's been a big shock factor. Okay, Knights, I love the idea, honestly, because it makes them think A site's going to be heavily pressured, but they had one on long, which meant they knew they weren't pushing long. And on top of that, you go a bit too quickly, so they'll just spray through for taps of damage, gets the kill. It's unbelievable.
Love that.
But it's not enough. Niner Esports get the spike down on B, and they'll need to fall back quickly. They had gotten the win previously, but they don't have the snake bite any further. What if we just don't let them touch the spike? Well, you don't have the ability now to deny that.
You ain't got your rival for that.
You don't got Mr. Nickelodeon, as you quoted, to put the slime down upon them and put the pressure forward. Paint sticking this to half. They're going to stick it. And Paint will not be denied. Defuse from Florida Blue, and Niner Esports nothing burger for this round. This felt forced and ended the exact same way.
It was great knowing you all.
Oh, man.
Also delete my hard drive.
Every time we see those spikes being planted in cubbies, I mean, you know they're going to hug that corner. You know they're going to tuck themselves away. I mean, that's kind of what you're expecting.
Yeah,
Regardless, though, good to say for Niners there. I mean, not at least kind of doubling down on the smoke, creating a little bit of a train there towards that, like a little smoke caterpillar to at least go ahead and just kind of have multiple covers there and just make sure you can mitigate that breach to the fullest extent, knowing you have all the resources to at least just kind of keep that thing sprayed down and keep yourself close quarters. But even then, off the back of just classics and maybe a sheriff or two, I can understand why they weren't pulling what they were pulling. But what is being pulled out is going to be that operator. Chamber over there towards the seaside of the map. That's the aggression angle. And even then will be met with a little bit of opposition. You had that angle already set up for him with the Trailblazer to kind of create a distraction for it. Really good plays to really force that man back, if I do say so.
Damage going out. Halibel has assistance from Aiden, but they'll all be forced to fall back with that lockdown being utilized from Niner Esports. Yeah, I just feel like that you have it, don't burn it. But at the same time, if you have it and it's a, you know, match point, series point scenario, burn it like you did with the Viper's Pit anyways. 3v5 though, this is, you don't even have the utility at distance. It's not like you have a Sova with a Hunter's Fury to hold all the way back towards C long. You have to pray that Sika gets a kill and they get a nothing burger like the rest of the team did up to this point.
I mean, who's all alive right now? Your KJ, your Omi, you can throw smokes out, but I mean, how many of those do you really have available to you? Push is going to have to come through. You hear the spike going ahead and being tapped there, but considering that you're both on the same side, you can't go for a cross there. You double swing, line up for Song. get them in pretty close to another ultimate to work with, even though that last one didn't expend in that last round. And, well, quite frankly, Florida Blue, they're just getting more and more resources to work with. Even though you're on match point, Niner Esports, the biggest really stall is just themselves at this point. 12-8, you're on match point, but, I mean, you've been held here for a pretty good long while now. And keep in mind, once again, that last run they won was only off the back of just Florida Blue being way too short to the cut. I think they learned their lesson now because they're really putting their gear down and they're making sure to kind of speed things up because they know we only have so much of a limited time before Niners can really do anything. We have control of the game. We're not going to take a timeout. We're not going to give them that chance to talk anymore. We're just going to go ahead and keep on playing this game and finding these picks and kind of leaving them with almost nothing.
Huge sprint towards the seaside. They know they're in a thrifty, so they just might as well close the space as fast as they possibly can. Showstopper employed. Halibel and Paint good for one. Paint does fall, but Siren was also close to the table and could just bring their own sort of deliberations to the board. And the board says, all right, cut down every Niner Esport player you see.
No more Sova.
At least just precise. And their moment of choice now rotating as quick as they can, or maybe as slow as they can at this rate. Until they use the from the shadows, the fastest rotate possible to get out of the A site and go for the plant. But it'll be a 1v1, and you only have a sheriff. What are you asking from an E-Shark here?
Hey, don't say anything just yet.
Last player
Okay,
standing.
now you can say it. I was gonna say, this thing is a
I'll say it now.
easy.
From the shadows, utilized now for the side of Florida. They're just going to stand in front of it, but it's not going to.
Dude,
Song
what
is
a
now.
song,
That
man.
is 3 in a row where they've just fired through a toxic screen of an Omen dark cover in a Viper's pit. What? Check this man computer. This not.
I don't know if that was production or that was song, but I saw a couple pixels there on the bottom, a little bit of clipping there, and the production. I don't know.
Little bit.
Maybe a tell. Who knows?
Song is. Listen, I saw Song's DPI increase by 1,000 in 0.1 seconds. I mean, check this man's computer. This
I do
not
have
normal.
a DPI button when I'm defusing spikes
Dude.
where I can just
Man.
swing everywhere. You're never touching my head. I'm
The old
talking, I get
CS strategy.
whiplash whenever I'm defusing that spike. Pro tip.
Most people usually hop off and then try to shoot back in Valorant. In CS, that's a good strategy, you know, because you can't stick it to half. But I get it. I understand. I mean, considering that was a lost cause round, it was an eco round with nothing but classics to their name and sheriffs. And they did fine. They get spike down. They get a good spot, take down 2 weapons. But at the point we are, Florida Blue is doing too damn good in the eco to be worried about. And they even get a first blood with Hunter's Fury.
Let's go for one. I mean, this is where the trades start to come out here. I mean, already KJ, a little bit of low health. I mean, it feels like Niners, every time they see a smoke, they have to clinch a little bit. Just because it's like, who knows what's going to happen through that? It feels like so many players, they take so much damage, they get shot too much, that they're just trying to, once again, gain that momentum, gain that pressure of the game back. But quite frankly, just, I mean, Florida Blue, they seem tried and tested here. You'd expect at this point in the game where you're saying, I'm pushing into spawn. I'm killing all these guys. They're just getting ran over. And they're saying, just hold side. There's nothing to this. We're winning the game because we're playing the game like this. Niner Esports doesn't have the chance to take a break anymore. They only found 1 round. It was accidental off the back what they did.
30 seconds
I'm
left.
just at fault of Florida. That, I mean, I'm not going to say that this could be done, but I mean, it's
planted.
extremely feasible. Niner Esports is not saved up enough. They're kind of in that same hole where you're saying eco, non-eco, eco, non-eco. They could have saved a bunch up to this point. And when I saw that 1 round where they were saving, I was expecting that exact thing. They just haven't showed it off.
Player standing.
Song, I'm sorry, but this is unbelievable. 4 times now, through a cover, through distance, a corner even. This has got to be, this is just, oh my goodness. Song has been a good player, consistent, but their ability to shoot through smokes is unbelievable. You're looking at another round now for Niner Esports. The loser's bonus is tallying up towards them, but they are losing so often and buying so often. It's not enough to get them substantial buys when they need it. They're now 2 rounds away from OT being guaranteed for Florida Blue, which, I mean, we kind of expected that in a 7-0-7-0 teams facing off against each other. But when it was 9-3 at half and quickly became 11-3. This is an absolutely egregious performance from Niner Esports to close things out, and I get their attack is difficult on this map. The Florida Blue have shown weaknesses. They're not gods. They can bleed. This isn't a Batman versus Superman moment. And they're still making mistakes this late. It's the difficulty of saying, oh, we've got 9 rounds of wiggle room. We can screw around a little bit. No, you can't. You cannot give any grades to this.
Please. You see smokes. You know Song's gonna kill you through them. So just don't even try it.
rotate somewhere else and figure out where in the map. You've seen so much utility invested right here towards A side. And I mean, that's the one thing that they haven't really had too much information on. They know Florida Blue is always quick for the setup, but they never know when Florida's going to execute on that retake. And quite frankly, there towards the middle of the map, you've now had the information that Chamber is available. He's going to be there with the operator. He's not even holding a long angle. Quite frankly, that leaves C a little bit open for the taking, I'd say. But they're going to wrap right back around C with all the utility being invested towards A, saying, surely nobody's rotated by now. They have plenty of time to do so, and you're going to meet 3 of them immediately.
And Song's about to peek this smoke. I'm calling it. Oh, it's Fizz this time. Never mind. Nope, Song's here too. Down goes
30
Precise. More chances. Song, just do it to him. Flick up. You know he's there. And he's right there. It doesn't matter. Steps out. They're done. Song could take down Mayor too. But ain't it with the shorty. 12-11. And Niner Esports have disappointed. Not just us, which is like shocking. It's hard to find us be disappointed in a good series, but also the fans out there. This is a blowout until it wasn't. And Florida Blue have made fans of me and you, I'm sure, because this is ridiculous. It's hard to root for a team that has had so many chances and still allowed it to slip through their fingertips. And Florida Blue have been played this well. 2 operators? Are you kidding?
My thing is, it's not about being a fan. I mean, obviously, we want a good game, but I mean, natural selection exists for a reason, man. You don't watch those animal documentaries. Watch a gazelle just get its leg bitten off by a tiger, and it's just like, yo, I'm good. I'm gonna fight back now, winning. This isn't a Disney cartoon, bruh. This is real life.
Well, it's technically a video game. Close enough. Darwin would be profusely angry at the scenario. Is Knight staring for a cipher cam? Was he watching? I think he's reaching for the
I've
recon
got your
goal.
trail.
Fizz spots Knight going forward. That's why they're rushing forward as fast as they possibly can. Comboing that with a sequence is not a bad call, but you can't let that go up. It's big!
Okay.
3 kills for Niner Esports. Knight rushing past Fizz's control there towards long, or yeah, through long and ramp. Denies a lot of that space proclaimed from Florida Blue, and you're looking at a 4v2. Rolling Thunder makes things difficult though, but Spike's already gone down. Halibel good for their trade for the doppelganger of Anishar, but the judge, jury, and maybe executioner of Knight gets the corner to
Always good
Song
for one.
and puts this in a 1v3. 1 HP maybe Knight, but it's still good with the operator. Knight says night to Florida Blue and sends us out of Haven finally 13-11.
Crazy thing that both the rounds actually won after the pistol there for Niners was off the back of Knight. The one who called the time initially, held things out, Mr. Nickelodeon himself, just kind of slowing things down and saying, look, not only can I do that, I can also be John Wick, baby. 1 kill, 2 kills, swap guns, I got to reload, don't worry about that operator pickup. It's one of those scenarios where you're like, he was fed up. It was that beast kind of caged up there that just needed the opportunity to get something, had to have presence, had to have a sight, needed backup, because it feels like that's the one thing that the Niners excel with. It's looking to trade off of each other. But Florida Blue has really gone ahead and rusted these guys up this week. They looked like a shining plate of armor, but they have been beat to hell, it seems like, this week after that kind of series. 11-3 is what we asked for on Ascent. But you know what? If it comes around eventually, I'm not going to complain. I mean, 7-0 on both these teams. It's expected to a certain degree. But after that first half, you're just saying, and even better yet, the follow-up there for the rest of those extra rounds, you're saying, why is this occurring? And I mean, quite frankly, I didn't have a read for Florida Blue there of what they're really doing. They're just playing the game. And they played a really good retake that they knew that obviously at a point like that, I'm surprised we didn't see Niners kind of spark up that confidence at least for a little bit and say, hey, let's at least push. Let's go ahead and extend over, because we give them that space to set up for that retake, find all that utility, and find that effectiveness. And even then, the one round that they won before that, keep in mind, it wasn't just Knight with this Vipers, you know, all that kit that was available there, but it was the fact that you're bringing that pressure there and making them second guess a lot of stuff, because that's what Florida Blue, I think, are really excelling, that we're going to see possibly next week in that matchup, is saying, okay, what are we doing here? And they'd like to sit around. They'd like to go ahead and have those timeouts there while the spike is ticking, instead of just kind of having an established plan. That was a big loophole then. Niners didn't really read it. They were kind of really concerned about that big number up top and saying, oh my God, we're going to lose this game, and got too distracted by it.
I want to point out, you say there's not very many things you could say that Florida did that made that stat line go so fervently in their favor in the second half. But we could highlight the things that made Niner have a dominant first half, which is why it's so odd that we can't call it one thing specifically for Florida. If I had to say one thing for Florida, it'd be zone control in area denial. That would be it. And the craziest thing is they weren't the ones with the Viper. Right? They were the ones using a Sova for that, right? They were just trying to hold down a long on ramp side and weren't going for early picks, which is the whole strategy for Niner. How many times do we see players on Niner Esports drop through short and try to fight down there in sewer? How many times do we see them rush through garage doors and through B courtyard to find kills early? That was Niner Esports' forte. It threw things. It threw a spanner in the works if you're British. It threw a wrench in things if you're a real-blooded American. They made sure that there was nowhere to sit still for Florida, right? That was the idea. It put them in a really bad spot and made them uncomfortable, and they took advantage of those scenarios. But for Florida, they just played their game. And I think that's what it is. It's their game. The only thing we can say that gave them that edge, and it's what you expect to do as a 7-0 team. It's just the closing was a lot harder. Niners Esports, because that first half already had this huge lead and just needed you to make mistakes. And you didn't. But Knight stepped up to the plate like they did for both those rounds and really saved grace. If that 0.57 second defuse had gone through, this would have been an OT series guaranteed. It just would
More
not
likely
have been.
You get collapsed.
It probably would have been with OT. I think the momentum would have been more fervently in favor of Florida, which is a big problem, especially in Valorant for the longer series go on. But that's it for us here today. Starting next week, we'll have interviews as well with the winning teams at the end of it. So make sure you guys are stay tuned. I will not be here, unfortunately, but you'll still be good hands here with Dallas and Ethan in the broadcast booth instead. All right, really have to hit them with that one. All right, I see how it is. Listen,
I'll
you're
cast
a
with CSGO
co-caster
fans,
now,
man.
right?
Come on.
I'm not letting that one slide. Don't throw him under the dirt here just yet. But you'll still be in good hands. It'll be fine. And it's going to go well. You're going to have better series ahead of you as we get closer and closer to the end of this one. Still best of ones. But that grand final will be a BO3. We're going to make sure it's a great one. Stay tuned for next week's action.
Tired of gravity surrounding me. I feel the forces of my mind, but there's a fire in my heart. I wanna feel weightless again. My color glows, it echoes through your shadow. My